November 15th afternoon session of the City Council. Carla, could you please call the roll?
Udaly?
Here.
Fritz?
Here.
Fish?
Here.
Wheeler? Saltzman?
Here. Okay, could you please read the two items on our agenda? Read those together, please. Items 1183 and 1184.
Council rules first?
Oh, I'm sorry. Council rules. Right.
Welcome to the Portland.
Dan is new at this.
Yeah.
Welcome to the Portland City Council. The City Council represents all Portlanders and meets to do the city's business. The presiding officer preserves order and decorum during City Council meetings so everyone can feel welcome, comfortable, respected, and safe. To participate in council meetings, you may sign up in advance with the council clerk's office for communications to briefly speak about any subject. You may also sign up for public testimony on resolutions or the first readings of ordinances. Your testimony should address the matter being considered at the time. When testifying, please state your name for the record. Your address is not necessary. Please disclose if you are a lobbyist. If you are representing an organization, please identify it. The presiding officer determines the length of testimony. Individuals generally have 3 minutes to testify unless otherwise stated. When you have 30 seconds left, a yellow light goes on. When your time is done, a red light goes on. If you are in the audience and would like to show your support for something that is said, please feel free to do a thumbs up. If you want to express that you do not support something, please feel free to do a thumbs down. Disruptive conduct such as shouting or interrupting testimony or council deliberations will not be allowed. If there are disruptions, a warning will be given that further disruption may result in the person being ejected for the remainder of the meeting. After being ejected, a person who fails to leave the meeting is subject to arrest for trespass. Thank you for helping your fellow Portlanders feel welcome, comfortable, respected, and safe.
Okay, thank you, Robert. Okay, Carla, now could you read items 1183 and 1184, please?
1183, adopt the Central City in Motion Final Report and Implementation Plan. 1184, adopt the Central City in Motion Parking Supply and Demand Management Strategies Report.
Commissioner Udaly.
Thank you, President. Thank you, everyone, for being here today. Our central city is growing with new jobs and households, but our streets are not getting any wider, and with any luck, they're not going to. While carpooling to City Hall this morning between the Joint Policy Advisory Committee on Transportation and our work session this morning, I was stuck in traffic on the Hawthorne Bridge next to a TriMet bus, and it felt it just felt like a very apropos experience given what we're here to talk about today. It's clear we have major problems now, and if all the new residents and commuters we expect to live and work in the central city get around as we do today, the result would be a 47% increase in car trips. Our struggling street network would cease to function if that happens. The plan in front of us today spells out how to prevent that from occurring. Building off the work of the Central City 2035 plan, PBOT has worked for the past 2 years identifying investments that will help us avoid gridlock and make transit, biking, and walking faster, safer, and more reliable. This plan is called Central City in Motion. It's the product of extensive engagement. The project team has engaged with over 9,000 Portlanders via advisory committees, workshops, presentations, focus groups, bike rides, surveys targeted at hospitality workers and people with disabilities, as well as interactive online open houses. Central City in Motion lays out 18 key projects specifically designed to make transit faster and more reliable, increase access to jobs and services by bike by creating a connected bikeway network, and ensure our central city has safe and accessible crossings. The projects will increase the capacity of our streets so they can move more people, helping us accommodate growth. I want to take a moment to say, even though the mayor is not here, to thank him again for assigning PBOT to me. I really had no idea how fascinating transportation was and just how big of a nerd I could become about it. I really am loving it. Love the team, love the community advocates. Transportation is something that touches all of our lives, and we should all have a say in it. Not only do we need to balance current need with future demand, I want to make it clear that I see very clearly that we need to encourage through incentives, disincentives, and improvements to the overall system, people to change their deeply ingrained behavior and cherished traditions, namely owning and driving a single occupant vehicle. This effort is modeled on East Portland in Motion, PBOT's sister implementation strategy focused on investments in East Portland active transportation needs, to which over $255 million has been allocated to date. This represents over 3.5 times more than the $72 million of projects proposed in Central City in Motion. So I want to take a moment to briefly address some concerns that I've heard, which is that we shouldn't be investing in our Central City when we have so much to do in East Portland. First of all, there are budget maps on our website, I think on the Budget Office website, where you can see how we're investing our various dollars, whether it's transportation and housing or other dollars. And you will see a significant increase in investment in East County. In fact, we're currently over-investing in East County relative to estimated population growth in order to make up for some of that historic underinvestment. I have repeatedly demonstrated through my efforts and initiatives my commitment to East Portland. And in fact, this plan will also benefit East Portland. Well, how could that be, you may be asking yourself. That is because the congestion in our Central City and the fact that our public transportation hub is downtown impacts every person trying to take a bus and across our entire city and throughout a lot of the region. If you live in East Portland and never take the bus, even if you live in East Portland and never take the bus downtown, all transit riders should want us to invest in Central City bus lanes to ensure their buses aren't delayed trying to cross the river during rush hour every day, which seems to be almost round the clock at this point, if I'm being honest. While every change to our Central City streets involves trade-offs, these projects were selected to ensure we can achieve these outcomes with the fewest possible impacts. It's becoming increasingly clear doing nothing is not an option. For climate, for air quality, for Vision Zero, for transit reliability, we cannot afford to delay these investments. Adopting Central City in Motion does not set street designs in stone. It sets directions for where to make investments in the bus lines, protected bike lanes, and safer crossings we need. It will allow PBOT to begin to design on these critical projects, ensuring that block-by-block needs are considered and accommodated. The accompanying parking strategies, also an area of controversy in the community. That report provides a range of options for managing change in the Central East Side, recognizing that many of us still rely on cars to get around, and many of our local businesses rely on on-street parking for their customers. But again, none of it is carved in stone. We're not allocating public funds to new parking structures with this report, and if any new parking structure is ever developed, it should be adaptable to other uses if current parking trends change, which, in case that wasn't clear, because I just stumbled over my words a little bit, we should be designing parking structures with second life in mind, when we are not so reliant on single occupant vehicles, when we do not need the level of parking we currently need, and we certainly have better uses for our developable property. Okay. I will direct staff to move forward immediately with strategies that will support businesses and employees with tools like the Transportation Wallet Program and partnering with OMSI and other owners of existing surface parking lots that could be better utilized and take some pressure off of our parking. I'm directing PBOT staff to convene a working group to monitor the implementation of this plan I will charge that group with reconciling any issues that come up at today's hearing, as well as making sure that projects are producing intended outcomes. I provided a draft of the charter of the working group to council members, and there should be copies available for the public. I didn't notice on my way in, but I'm sure someone on my staff is listening to me and taking care of that issue at this very moment. We urgently need to get to work on these projects. That's why I'm asking my colleagues to vote on this resolution today. It's taken us 6 years to develop this plan, and there will be plenty of opportunity to debate the specifics of individual projects as they are designed and built. But we need to adopt this plan today in order to move forward on any of them. So at this time, I'd like to invite Gabe Graff and Art Pierce from PBOT to present the plan.
Good
Welcome,
afternoon.
gentlemen.
Thank you. I'm Art Pierce, I'm the Policy Planning and Projects Manager for the Bureau of Transportation. I'm really excited to be here with you today and offering the product of considerable work and considerable amount of time. In 2012, when we applied for funding for this endeavor, we realized that we needed a large, comprehensive plan, a solution at a larger scale, to match the scale of growth and change that we were seeing in the Central City, and understanding that we needed both money for more planning work as well as for the first range of capital investments. And so we framed this effort to hopefully correctly build enough momentum to make change coming out of the process. As Commissioner already relayed, a major driver of this discussion is around growth. It's around continue to be a competitive city as Portland grows, and knowing that if we want the Central City to continue to be the economic hub that it is today, and to be competitive with cities around the country, if not the globe, we need to continue to help the city evolve and make better space of the roadways that we have to be able to keep providing the mobility that we think everyone deserves. We're not alone in facing these challenges. There are cities all throughout the country that are endeavoring in exactly these types of efforts, really working to take the growth that is a factor of success and try to continue to pave the way towards being a competitive city. So a couple of examples. One is very nearby to us. Seattle really serves as both an example of success, also, though, a cautionary tale. They have made major investments in bus lanes and bikeways, and they're seeing great responses to that. But that investment and the timeliness of that response really did not keep pace with the development. And Seattle, therefore, has earned a reputation for its congestion as part of what it is known. Part of the Seattle brand, of course, now, is the congestion that its residents and visitors endure on a daily basis. Seattle's Department of Transportation has told the public that they are in what they call a period of maximum constraint, meaning that traffic will get worse before it gets better based on the timing of their response. That's a fate that, of course, we want to avoid. We want to get ahead of this scale of problems and challenges before we reach that moment where we're really at that level of critical inflection. Calgary, which is Canada's fastest growing city, has worked on piloting over the course of 1 year a downtown grid of protected bikeways. They've seen remarkable success in this. They have seen a 40% jump in bike trips in the downtown, an increase in the percentage of bike riders that are women, and a really radical reduction in sidewalk riding, which was a major issue there and I know is an issue for this council as well. In Denver, as part of Denver Moves, the city's multimodal plan to connect their downtown area, the city has built more than 12 miles of downtown bikeways, and they have seen an 81% increase in bike commuters and a 34% drop in crashes involving bicycles. In Vancouver, also nearby, the city is investing in bus lanes and downtown protected cycle tracks to accommodate more than 50,000 new residents who have moved to the city since 2006. We've heard from the Vancouver Business Association, their major chamber of commerce, that they stated, "We want all customers to be able to get to our businesses regardless of age and abilities. These bicycle improvements do that. Our employers also want to attract employees, and the research is showing the workforce is changing, and we need to embrace the needs of that changing workforce." slide. It's also, I think, at moment of these, and that it's, I think, incumbent on me to remind us that we're always changing the city. The city is changing on a daily basis, and really part of our role as the public is to intervene and direct that change into a direction that we can be proud of. I think it's also important for us to remember that streets and the public realm are in our care and are a representation of our values. And so if you're looking at these historic slides, this was the time in which we actually had a postcard, if you look at the bottom right, that tells you to be careful crossing the streets of Portland. So this is, this is what was how Portland was selling itself to the globe in the 1950s and 60s.
Still relevant.
And it's still relevant, right? It is, right? Very true. But so if we're looking at, and looking at what is now, Pioneer Square as storage for public parking. So if we're looking at, sort of the direction that we can take this conversation, one of the other sort of cautionary tales in there is, as we were looking at growing, if you remember Steve Dodder, who teaches transportation history, he has a slide that talks about moving the building faces along West Burnside. It cost $4 million to change 4 blocks of West Burnside in the 1930s, I think it was. And they actually put the building faces on casters to slide them back in order to widen West Burnside. And that's why we have these narrow blocks there. But you think about the scale of what it would take for us to, instead of looking at how to use our space more efficiently, to instead focus on widening all of our streets. It would be without end and without end of consequences. So we do have great examples from our not too distant history of where this city council and this region took very progressive and aggressive choices to buck what was the trends at the time. Our waterfront park, our Pioneer Square, and our transit mall are all examples that we all tell when we talk about the sort of heroic efforts of Portlanders past. We really feel like this is an opportunity for us to continue to emphasize that our streets and our public spaces are for the people of Portland, and it is incredibly cost-effective to reuse our streets to move people more effectively. As we understood from the cautionary tales from cities like Seattle's, this challenge will not get easier if we wait or delay this decision. We are already experiencing increased congestion in our central city at an alarming rate. And the proposed solutions that we have before you today are a major step in the right direction of curbing that tide. And really what we're bringing to council today is an opportunity for your leadership in helping us choose amongst all the ways that we might change the central city on the most targeted and prioritized improvements so we can proceed with more detailed outreach and connection with property owners along those ways. I'll pass it on to Gabe to give us some more details.
Thank you, Art.
You bet.
Commissioners, thank you for having me. My name is Gabe Graff. I am the project manager with the privilege of managing this Central City in Motion project for the last couple of years. And a little bit about the Central City. It's a special place for our city, for our region, for our state. It's the densest concentration of people and jobs in Oregon, and just 3% of the city's land area. Home to cultural institutions, major employers, half of the city's affordable housing stock, key social services. Our central city is growing, and we expect it to absorb 30% of Portland's population growth. Today, home to 30,000 households, 130,000 jobs. By 2035, we expect 70,000 households, 180,000 jobs. And as Commissioner Udaley noted, the central city is the right place for this growth, but we must invest in our transportation system to make sure that we can serve all of these new trips that growth entails. Our central city streets are already congested, and all Portlanders have a stake in a reliable transportation system in our central city, even if they don't live or work here. And it's not just transit riders who are stuck in traffic. Everyone is. This view of Southwest Madison is likely familiar to this room, to you commissioners. Commuters are stuck in traffic waiting to cross the Hawthorne Bridge, regardless of how they travel, by bus, by bike, by car. Everyone is stuck. Congestion impacts not just the commuters, but reliable freight movement in our central city, commute trips by car, and shopping as well. If the central city continues to grow as we expect, all of these new residents and commuters, and all of these residents and commuters get around as we do, as Commissioner Udaley noted, the result will be thousands of additional cars on central city streets. Imagine more cars trying to squeeze into this picture, and then think about every block on our city with additional vehicles. PBOT is committed to avoiding this future, and Central City in Motion is a key part of our Managing for Growth strategy to address it. While we can't make our existing streets wider without exceptional expense, we can make them more efficient. We can increase the capacity of our streets to move more people by ensuring we've dedicated space for everyone, especially space-efficient vehicles like buses and bikes. Southwest Madison and the Hawthorne Bridge can carry more people if we add a bus lane approaching them. The capacity of the Burnside Bridge to move people increases by 145% with the addition of an eastbound bus lane and protected bike lanes in either direction. As Art mentioned, fast-growing cities are all investing in these types of solutions because they work. One of the fastest-growing cities in the country, Seattle, has made these robust investments in pedestrian safety, protected bike lanes, and dedicated bus lanes. As a result, over the past 7 years, Seattle has added 60,000 jobs in their downtown core, and yet 4,500 fewer people drove to work. Smart investments meant all the new commute trips were accommodated by transit, ride-sharing, walking, and biking. And we can do the same. 39% of our central city is already streets and sidewalks. Knocking down buildings to build the new roads doesn't make sense, but by carefully selecting a few of these roads and dedicating a portion of the space on them to biking and buses, we can make travel easier for everyone, regardless of how they get around. The 18 projects in Central City in Motion will allocate an additional 1% of our right-of-way to buses, an additional 1% of our right-of-way to bikes, bringing the total roadway space dedicated to transit and biking in our central city to just 6%. But these methods of travel are so space efficient, this small percentage of increases the people moving capacity of the respective streets by 60%. So what is in this plan? Stemming from a Metro grant approved by Council back in 2013, Central City in Motion was designed to look holistically at our transportation system to address these key issues. Safety. 45% of high crash intersections in our city are in the Central City for people walking or biking. Clarity. Central City stakeholders have asked PBOT to delay investments and biking investments in the downtown until the completion of the Central City 2035 plan, and a study was completed. This is that study. Climate and air quality. These projects will help us meet our climate action goals and the recent Bloomberg Climate Challenge. And, of course, growth, which I've previously detailed. It's an implementation plan. It's focused on the next 5 to 10 years. It's focused on investments in bus lanes and bikeways and accessible and safer crossings. Based on our sister effort, East Portland in Motion, as Commissioner Udaley mentioned. We took a system-level look at all the needs and potential projects in our central city and worked with the public on where to focus and prioritize our investments. We began with the Central City 2035 plan, which updated traffic classifications on all of our central city streets. And we reached out to Portlanders via a series of engagements to get additional ideas. We've engaged over 9,000 Portlanders in this effort using an all-of-the-above strategy, including a terrific sounding board in our advisory committee, focus groups, monthly meetings, targeted surveys, interactive and mobile-friendly online open houses, design workshops, and dozens of presentations to many of the folks in this room. We were transparent in daylighting the trade-offs that are inherent in making some of these changes, and we ended up looking at the central city in a variety of lenses. I'll detail them quickly here. First, transit. We're seeking to leverage the resources the central city already has, and robust transit service is one of them, but it's getting increasingly slower and less reliable due to congestion. So we focused on where the investments could improve the travel time and reliability for the most transit commuters. TriMet, Multnomah County, Metro have been tremendous collaborative partners in this effort. TriMet provided granular data on where their buses had the most people and where they were experiencing the most delay. You'll see that in this map here. For biking, unlike our transit network, our bikeway network is disconnected. In red, you'll see our existing and funded low-stress network. There are thousands of jobs and destinations in the central city that Portlanders can't access today comfortably by bike. We looked at all the options outlined in the Central City 2035 plan, which you'll see in yellow, and then ended up focusing on those routes shown in teal, what we propose as the future backbone of our low-stress bikeway network. For people walking and rolling, we recognize that while the Central City's sidewalk network is largely complete, there are many missing and substandard or inaccessible crossings. We focused on identifying those needs and setting the stage for the future Green Loop by thinking forward to where signalized crossings could benefit that alignment.
Before you move from that last
Yes.
slide, there are some places where there isn't a connected sidewalk, particularly along NATO next to Waterfront Park. I don't see that on there. Is there a plan to provide sidewalks where there aren't any?
Yes, there is, and I'll
Get to that.
I'll get to that in a
Got
little
it,
bit,
thank
if that's
you.
all right. Yeah. Another lens that emerged during the early stages of the process was the importance of ensuring safe and reliable access for freight, particularly in the Central East Side. We partnered with the Central East Side Industrial Council on a freight study for the district, gathering data about freight portals, loading zones, and meeting on site with major operators like Franz, and adjusting our plans to ensure they were compatible with the freight operations in the district. We identified trade-offs, calculating all the curb zones that may be impacted as we deliver these projects. And all this work informed our design process. Bus lanes proposed on Southeast Belmont were scrapped after reviewing traffic impacts. A bikeway proposed adjacent to Franz was reconsidered after observing the operations of their triple trailers. And the transit mall was set aside as the major north-south bikeway as the impacts to traffic circulation, building access, transit operations, and existing parking structures were too great. At the end, the result of all this work is 18 key multimodal projects that are before you today. We winnowed hundreds of ideas to these 18 projects. We made choices about where to focus, where changes to the street design could have the most benefits and the least impacts. At a system level, these 18 projects will provide dedicated bus lanes approaching the Steel, Burnside, and Hawthorne bridges, improving the commutes of 86,000 daily TriMet riders, provide access to an additional 60,000 jobs and 49 key social services via connected low-stress bikeway network, improve the safety and accessibility of 88 crossings, including some of the highest crash intersections for vulnerable road users in our city. All told, they will increase the people-moving capacity of their respective streets by 60%, helping us manage this growth. I'll quickly highlight a few of these projects, not just the most popular ones, but also some of the more controversial ones, and underscore that as we move forward with the design and implementation of these projects, we're committed to working with all partners to make sure that they're a success. So first, West Burnside, called Project Number 1. This project would implement an eastbound bus lane from the park blocks on the west side of the river all the way to 12th on the east side, and includes a series of pedestrian safety improvements on West Burnside Street and protected bike lanes across the Burnside Bridge. Project Number 2, this provides the major spine for north-south bikeway through downtown, enhancing the existing bikeway on Southwest Broadway and creating a new northbound couplet on Southwest 4th, serving destinations south of 405 as well as Portland State University. Project Number 3, in the Central East Side, we looked at a number of options for locating, improving bus service, improving pedestrian safety, locating the Green Loop, and providing a north-south connection for people cycling. And we landed on a range of options, identifying different streets for different needs. MLK and Grand were identified to have bus lanes and freight lanes. Southeast 6th was identified for improved pedestrian crossings to benefit the Green Loop. And Southeast 7th will benefit from protected bike lanes north-south connecting to the Sullivan's Crossing Bridge. For project number 5, we looked at Southwest Jefferson, Columbia, and Madison. Southwest Madison, which I previously mentioned, will benefit from a new bus lane approaching the Hawthorne Bridge. And Jefferson and Columbia will be reconfigured to deconflict buses and bicycles, smooth vehicular traffic, and really prioritize those streets as a key east-west transit corridor in our central city. Project number 7 is a short stretch of Northwest Everett, but it has a big impact. This would provide a bus lane for all of the buses that cross the Steel Bridge, providing them dedicated space and priority as they approach that important bridge crossing. Oh, and last but not least, Southwest NATO. This project has evolved over the course of our process. Our current proposal is to dedicate one of the northbound travel lanes to people biking, essentially making what is the seasonal Better NATO project a permanent fixture of our central city, and to phase in the sidewalk infill along the west side of the curb as the trees along the waterfront park reach the end of their life. A lot of the public feedback we received over the course of the process was about maintaining those trees. To make this work well for all users of NATO Parkway, regardless of how they get around, we're proposing to upgrade signals all along the corridor so that they can detect vehicular queuing and dynamically adjust the signal timing to make sure that people who are, say, trying to access I-5 off the Morrison Bridge are not stuck in long delays. Those are an overview of the hottest of our 18 projects.
And where would people be able to find out if the other ones, if they want to? I appreciate that you're just giving us that
sure.
selected version, but to find out more, how would people?
Our full report and details on all the projects are available at our website, so it's portlandoregon.gov/transportation/CCIM.
Thank you very much.
In addition to the freight study I mentioned earlier, we also completed this parking supply and demand management report, which Commissioner Udaley mentioned, to explore options for mitigating parking impacts that are inherent in some of the proposed projects. Staff identified a range of strategies, 6 of which we considered recommended strategies for handling these parking impacts, and that we think we can fully mitigate the loss of on-street parking with. They include enhanced transportation demand management, our transportation wallet program, shared off-street parking, which is now allowed under the Central City 2035 plan, on-street parking operational improvements, so working block by block to ensure that we've got the curb zone programmed in the best way. New mobility incentives. Our recent scooter pilot has shown that new technology can really change the way how people get around, and survey data from our scooter users shows that they do actually reduce driving. And an off-street pay station pilot. So if you own an existing surface lot that's not currently public parking, we could partner with you to open that up at times when you're not using it. Additional strategies we looked at the request of our stakeholders were capacity and operational improvements at Smart Park garages, and also an off-street parking investment fund where the Bureau would partner with another developer who's building structured parking to make sure that, to allow for some of it to be available for the public. And then finally, we asked Portlanders to weigh in on all 18 of these projects and which ones we should deliver first to help us prioritize our work. In red here, you'll see those projects that have that appear on our 1 to 5 year project list. So they've been sort of sliced and diced. Some key projects, the Burnside project I highlighted, Broadway and 4th, Northeast Southeast 7th connecting to that new Sullivan's Bridge, Southwest Madison, which we discussed, Northwest Everett are on this 1 to 5 year list. We've also identified a 6 to 10 year list of recommended projects, so projects that did not meet that highest level of priority, or that need more work need additional work on the design to make sure that we've got a project that'll work for everybody. I'll say finally, I'd like to thank the Northeast Coalition of Neighbors, Southeast Uplift, Business for Better Portland, the Street Trust, the Downtown Neighborhood Association, Lyft, Go Lloyd, Portland Streetcar, OMSI, the Elliott Neighborhood Association, BIRD, the Pearl District, Portland State University, among others, for their letters of support for these projects, and also acknowledge the Portland Business Alliance, the Central East Side Industrial Council, and the Portland Freight Committee for their constructive feedback on several of them, and we look forward to continuing to work with everyone on trying to make these a success.
Commissioner Udaley, do you have some panels that we're going to hear from?
We do, but
And we also have an elected official that's here.
yes.
So let's take some questions first of council,
Yeah.
and then we'll turn it over to the first panel. Commissioner Fritz.
Thank you, Mr. Acting President. Just going back to the NATO Project 17, in the report that we've got, it just says that a continuous sidewalk is desirable and could be implemented in phases as trees near the natural end of their life cycle. Some of them, my life cycle is going to be the natural end before theirs. So given that we're dedicating money for a bikeway, why are we not making sure that we have a pedestrian way? Because there's as many
Sure.
pedestrian and rolling needs as there are bike needs.
Just as the seasonal Better NATO pilot allows for pedestrian and bike access in the summers when it's implemented, this plan would allow for people to walk or roll or bike in the facility that we construct, with the idea that eventually a continuous sidewalk along the west side of the park would be constructed.
I guess one other thing I would add is part of what we're trying to do with the NATO project is reduce the conflicts that we're experiencing along the waterfront. And so I think it allows us to further direct cyclists away from the waterfront and to stay on NATO and to provide a more pleasant walking experience through the park itself. But it is a trade-off, yeah.
I have concerns about that, because there should be a sidewalk along NATO, not having to send pedestrians and those using mobility devices into the park. And certainly, I'm not going to be walking in a bikeway where people are going super fast. That's the problem with
Right, the way it is now.
the waterfront as it is now. What will you do in areas that we're getting protected bikeways to make sure that pedestrians have a pedestrian environment that is free of bikes?
I'm sorry I didn't include the slide of this. We've developed a decal for our sidewalks, so as projects are implemented, it will direct cyclists and scooter users to use the facilities and to not ride on.
So we will actually have signage that says that you're not supposed to roll
We're
on.
proposing so. I don't know that we've gone through the full vetting process with our commissioner, so I don't want to surprise her.
Okay. That's definitely on my bucket list. Could you just, though I know we're going to get testimony on why have the protected bikeways on 4th and Broadway rather than 5th and 6th, could you just elaborate a bit more about why you didn't do 5th and 6th?
Sure. There are a host of reasons. When we're looking at all of these projects, we're looking how can we get the benefits of protected bikeways and bus lanes with the least impacts, and that was the lens that we used for the north-south major north-south bikeway route through the downtown. There's a section of the transit mall, if you think about just the inner mall around Pioneer Square, where just walking around, you could see how it would work well as a bikeway, as a car-free transit mall. But if you spend some time, as we did on our project team, thinking through all the details of connecting it all the way down to 405 and PSU at the southern end, to the Broadway Bridge at the northern end, the challenges include access. So there's a number, like the Hilton Valet Zone, the parking structure. There's a number of parking structures. Their only access is off the mall. There's many landlocked buildings that are on the mall, so their garbage service, their deliveries occur off the mall. There's on-street parking on the mall that would need to be removed, particularly in the southern mall. Drive-throughs, the Wells Fargo drive-through, and then in the south downtown, because of the super block nature of that neighborhood, vehicular access off the mall is critical to accessing other buildings. Access from 6th to Harrison is the only way that some of those buildings can get service, be it deliveries or freight. So it was very technically challenging and also politically challenging. I mean, the other component I'll mention is that the property owners who are still paying in, will be paying until 2030 for the LID that constructed the mall. The key selling point was continual vehicular access.
And we should keep our promises.
Yes, we should
Thank you.
follow through on that.
That was a
yes.
helpful
Yes.
answer. And my last question, the Central East Side parking, you said that there were going to be some mitigation. Could you just explain more about what you have been working on just recently about Central East Side parking?
Yes, absolutely. We have a number of strategies that we think are quite promising. Z, I think we included in the packet, has expressed commitment in working with us on sharing some of their surface lots for employee parking in the Central East Side. The Central East Side Industrial Council operates a shuttle
okay.
that gets people from surface parking to their sites of employment. We also have a transportation wallet program. So if you are an employee in the Central East Side, you can get a parking permit. If you forego that permit, we will give you a pass that includes transit benefits, streetcar benefits, and bike town benefits. And there's 600 employees to date have, in the Central East Side, have taken us up on that offer. And part of our strategy would be to work directly with employers along routes where we're making improvements to provide them an even better transit benefits for their employees.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
I have a couple.
Okay.
Let me first start with the commissioner in charge. When I got my briefing in my office a few weeks ago on this proposal, it was obviously rich with detail, and it's a report. So not everything in the report is going to end up being implemented. What is your what's your plan in terms of taking the high priority projects, implementing them over the next 5 years? What will be the council's role in helping to shape the implementation strategy?
Well, that's a good question, and we've, I think, briefly discussed that, and I'm going to hand this back to Gabe.
Sure.
Yeah.
If you look at the resolution, we've proposed an annual report back to council to report on the progress in implementing the projects and their performance. And then, as Commissioner Daly proposed at the beginning of the session, there's also been an amendment to include a working group that would oversee implementation of the projects and monitor performance as well.
Thank you. That's helpful. Second, can I get an email copy of that excellent PowerPoint?
Oh, sure.
I know it sort of had some of the best of from your
Right.
underlying report.
Right.
But it's a good cheat sheet for those of us who need to have facts at our fingertips.
You
So
bet. Yes, for sure.
that rhymes.
Yeah, yeah.
At lunch, I took a lift up to OHSU, and when I came back from OHSU, I took a radio cab. And it's not lost on me, since I live and work downtown, that our roads are becoming increasingly clogged with TNCs. San Francisco recently did a report and the impact of TNCs on congestion. I don't want to be overly provocative here, but to what extent does the success of this plan depend on further regulations involving things like caps or the numbers of TNCs that are allowed on our downtown streets?
I do think it's a part of the solution, and that's other departments within the Bureau are definitely working on sort of deepening the partnership with those different TNC providers. A lot of it is, I mean, as each of them are able to bring more and more efficient use of even their own vehicles. So, you know, you riding alone in a TNC is very similar to you driving alone in terms of the amount of space that we're using on the road. But if we're able to direct people more towards the sharing platforms for those organizations, you then end up with 3 or 4 people using that same amount of space, and that's producing more and more efficiency of our roadway use. It's not as much as we might get out of a TriMet bus, but it's more than we're getting now. And so I think a lot of it is working with those providers to really push them more and more towards the sharing end of their platforms and really rewarding the delivery of that end of their programs. Yeah.
Thank you. And is Venture Portland at the table with you as a spokesperson for the small businesses in some of these business districts?
You know, I don't know the degree to which they've been.
May I just ask that they be either part of the team or consulted? Of
course, yeah.
We have found them particularly helpful at dealing with some of the conflicts you're likely to encounter when you go from your plan to actually implementation.
Yeah, for sure.
And they have in the past said that they are more useful to us if we engage them upstream.
Absolutely, yeah. Thanks. Okay.
I think that's how most people feel. Commissioner Fish, very timely question about the TNCs. I just raised it over lunch in a meeting with a lobbyist representing one of those groups. And while they have been in the past very resistant to the idea of limiting the number of permits or number of drivers on the road at any given time, I think it's becoming undeniable to the public and to them that they are impacting our streets negatively as far as congestion, adding to pollution, and the reality is that oversaturation of drivers means it's hard for anyone to make a decent living. So I am hopeful that there actually will be more receptive to that conversation moving forward. And it's something that I'm keenly interested in.
Thank you.
So, yeah. Gabe, would it be possible to go back to the slide where it shows the percentage of our streets dedicated to vehicles versus other modes? This just really stood out to me for a couple of reasons. One, for people who, all these changes to bicycle and pedestrian infrastructure are relatively new. So like other ways the city has changed, it's a little bit shocking and stressful to some people, and you hear complaints that we are privileging cyclists and pedestrians, that we're over-investing in this type of infrastructure at the expense of car drivers. And so I think it's really notable to see that actually only 4% of the space on our streets is dedicated to bicycle transportation, new mobility, buses, and MAX, and that after this plan, it will only be 6%, which for me makes me wonder if we're doing enough. Certainly, everyone in the city is a pedestrian unless they are absolutely housebound or have a jetpack and just directly shoot into this space from their vehicle to wherever their destination is. And more of us are riding bikes, and we want more and more of us to ride public transportation. So do you want to wade into that, or just leave it there?
I'd say, and just try, one of the things that's that is just true about buses or biking or pedestrians in terms of transportation is they're just so space efficient that you don't, half of our right-of-way doesn't need to be dedicated to them in order for our city to function. I looked at the statistics for Copenhagen, which has some of the highest bike commuting in the world. 62% of their trips are by bike. They've dedicated 7% of their roadway space to cycling. So 7% of their roads carry 62% of their trips.
Wow. That's fascinating. All right, thank you. Unless we have further questions, I'm going to invite the first panel up. Thank you.
And I just wanted to say, we have, at this point, 42 people signed up under public testimony, so I'm going to limit testimony to 2 minutes each when we get to that point.
All right, first invited panel is Bernie Bottomley from TriMet, Margie Bradway from Metro, and Mayor Gamba, City of Milwaukee. Welcome, everybody, and if you could also make your testimony concise so we can hear from as many community members as possible, that'd be great.
Defer to the mayor.
Good afternoon, everyone. I am Mark Gamba, I'm the mayor of Milwaukee, and I'm mostly here to cheer you on. We have a similar program that we're rolling out in Milwaukee. Over the next 9 years, we'll be spending around $50 million building bike and pedestrian transit access throughout our city. And we're doing this for a number of reasons. Climate is obviously a big one. But we recognize that you don't build your way out of congestion. You don't build road miles to solve congestion. You also don't reduce the number of people sitting and waiting in cars by building more parking. It's incumbent on us, I think the IPCC report made it really clear that we have a very short clock in which to start changing the way our society functions. and doing the very smart things that are in this plan that will increase mode share for bicycles, for pedestrians, and for transit is one of the fastest ways we get there. It's one of the most important things we do. So, you know, when you can make those three modes safer, more efficient, and, well, mostly that, safer and more efficient, biking is already more effective. I myself biked here today. I biked to most of my meetings in the central Portland area because it's faster. I can get almost anywhere and park faster than most people can in a car. So it is already the more effective way. If we can make it the more safe way, we're going to radically increase our mode share and therefore decrease our carbon pollution. So cheering you on, great job. It's a great plan. I'm really excited to see it. Thanks.
Thank you, Mayor.
Let me just also congratulate you on your reelection.
Thank you.
I think you had 96% of the vote?
95%.
95,
yes.
okay. excuse me.
Wow.
President Saltzman.
Do you have the names and addresses of that 5%?
I do not.
President Saltzman, Commissioners, Bernie Bottomley from TriMet, happy to be here today to fully support the Central City in Motion plan. We're very pleased with the work that's been done and very appreciative of the city's support for helping us improve service, not only in the downtown, but across the region. I just want to acknowledge a couple of folks who have been behind this effort for a long time. Former Commissioner Steve Novick first approached us at TriMet about securing some MTIP funding, which is the $5 million that has gone into doing some of the engineering and planning work for a number of the projects that are in the plan, and also similar projects around the region to speed up transit service. Art Pierce, who has been a stalwart. Margie, who before she moved over to Metro and also at Metro has been a significant factor in this idea moving forward. Gabe, Leah Treat, former director of PBOT as well, all have helped germinate and grow this idea to this point. So we're very supportive, as I mentioned. I wanted to just touch on an issue that Commissioner Ujeli mentioned, which is the positive impact of the implementation of this plan, not only on bus service in downtown, but across the region. Just the big three projects, we call them the big three, Madison, Everett, and Burnside, those will help us with 13 bus routes. That represents about 85,000 trips every day. So we're not just improving service downtown, but across the region. The delay that we have in our service and getting off schedule downtown ripples across the region, particularly into East Portland, where they feel the biggest brunt of the delay in getting downtown. We're very interested in seeing a number of these projects move forward as quickly as we can. As I mentioned, one of the reasons that there is funding to do some of these projects through the MTIP funding is that the city approached TriMet and asked us if we would borrow money to make those funds available now, as opposed to a couple of years from now when the federal funds actually start to flow. So the $5 million that you may have heard about as part of the Enhanced Transit Program is actually money that TriMet borrowed in anticipation of federal money that will be coming later from Metro and the JPAC process. So it's important that we follow through on that commitment that we were going to try to accelerate this process. The other reason is that Metro is leading a conversation in the region about a regional transportation funding measure. And we think that these enhanced transit corridor concepts, in addition to things like Southwest Corridor Light Rail, are really fundamental to making sure that the transit system works in this increasingly congested and growing region. These strategic investments, they're not developing a whole corridor from end to end necessarily, but taking a couple of intersections where we lose the most time, where we have the most riders sitting in that traffic. If we can fix those intersections and give the bus some priority, it really has a tremendous impact on improving the entire system. So we'd like to see some of these projects move quickly so that we can demonstrate to the region, to voters, that this is an investment that makes sense in a regional funding measure. So with that, I will just close and say that we very much appreciate the partnership with the city. We look forward to continuing to work with you and with Metro to see these projects move forward. Thank you.
Thanks. Hi, I'm Margie Bradway. I'm the Deputy Director of the Planning and Development Department at Metro. Good to see you. I want to note that my Metro councilors would be here, but they're also meeting right now. In particular, Councilor Stacy sends his regards. He's been a big champion of this project. Like Mayor Gamba, I'm here to cheer you on. Metro's been a steadfast supporter of this project starting back in 2013 when we allocated regional flex funds, or the funds that Bernie was talking about, to this project. And that, at that time, there was significant active transportation components. We've since also provided technical support for the transit components Bernie was talking about. In those 5 years, Metro's also done a lot of planning work. We completed an active transportation plan. We also created our safety Vision Zero plan, and we recently updated our regional transportation plan, which commits to reducing greenhouse gases by 40%. The Central City project is a key component of all of those plans. So we've had this concept out there. We've been talking about it. We've been planning for it, but we're ready to do it. So we're ready to see this implemented on the ground. We think it is key to meeting some of our regional goals around transportation efficiency, climate, and safety. And like TriMet, we're ready to do what you need to get this going. So thank you.
Margie actually reminded me of something that I had been surprised at when I read the plan, or the portions of the plan I got to read, that 20 of the 40 worst intersections, is that right, in your Vision Zero, are in this plan. You're solving half of your city's worst intersections for bikes and pedestrians?
For bikes and
in
peds.
this plan.
Yeah.
That was impressive. I mean, that's a big hit really fast. So that's particularly cool. I would point out to the folks with businesses on these streets that you can park a whole lot more bikes in front of your business than you can cars in front of your business. So the streets that have changed to more bike intensive streets have seen not just an uptick, a strong surge in their business. That's been our experience as well.
And I agree, and I have been pushing back on the parking issue as someone who owned a business in downtown Portland for 17 years and found it increasingly difficult to get customers, local residents, to cross the river and come downtown because they hate driving downtown, they hate parking downtown. So I believe that making it easier to get here by bike, on foot, or wheels, not cars, obviously, and by bus makes more sense than investing in more parking. Yeah. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Mayor. And I'm going to invite our next panel up. Ian Cannon from Multnomah County, Reza Farhoudi from Pearl Neighborhood Association, and Emily Barrett, AWS Elemental. Welcome, everyone. Please say your name for the record. And go in whatever order you'd like.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. I'm Ian Cannon, Transportation Director for Multnomah County. I'm here today to support the Central City in Motion project. Multnomah County maintains and operates the Hawthorne, Morrison, Burnside, and Broadway bridges. These bridges are critical links in the transportation network and serve thousands of trips each day for Central City commuters and residents, whether it be by car, bus, bike, or on foot. We're very pleased by the collaboration with our partners at the city and TriMet as our agencies have worked creatively together to get the most out of the bridges, to make them safer, and to support more users as our region grows. The Central City in Motion project includes a number of improvements for transit, pedestrian, and bicycling facilities on and approaching the bridges. Projects such as the bus lane across the Burnside Bridge, the improved bus and bicycle connections to Hawthorne, better connections to the Morrison Bridge multi-use path, and safety improvements on the approaches to the Broadway Bridge will leverage these assets to serve more users more safely into the future. We support the Central City in Motion project as a significant step in keeping Portland moving. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. My name is Reza Farhoudi, here on behalf of the Pearl District Neighborhood Association. And we support the package of projects proposed in Central City in Motion and urge you to adopt the plan as presented before you. The Pearl is a mixed-use neighborhood. We have many regional destinations, including parks, breweries, Powell's Books. And contrary to some opinion, we're also a mixed-income neighborhood. So over 60% of our residents are renters, and nearly a quarter of our housing is affordable, and many come to our neighborhood to access social services. Nearly half of our residents do not have access to a vehicle, which means they rely on other ways to get around. And with the amount of growth forecasted that PBOS showed you in their presentation, it quickly becomes an issue of geometry. We just don't have enough space on our roadways to accommodate all those new trips by automobile. And the vibrancy and livability of our neighborhood depends on having a transportation system that's efficient and safe for people to get around. Central City in Motion provides residents, employees, and visitors more transportation choices and creates a safer system for all users. And I want to bring up sidewalks specifically because I get a lot of complaints from people in my neighborhood, about the scooters, about people riding their bikes in their neighborhood. But anecdotally, I noticed that when there is a bike lane, people do use the bike lane to ride their bike or their scooter. And so if we want to create safer sidewalks, I think passing this plan is pertinent to doing so. So we want to thank PBOS for including us in the process. They've been very responsive to our concerns and feedback. They came to multiple number of our committee meetings and really felt like we were included in the process. And we look forward to working with them to implement these projects in the future. Thank you.
Hi, thank you. My name is Emily Barrett, and while I do work in high tech and I work just a couple blocks away, I'm here not in that role today, but as a board member for the Street Trust. I just joined the board because of the importance of biking, transit, and walking. I moved to Portland 16 years ago. The reputation of Portland as a place that I could enjoy without relying on a car, as I absolutely had to do in my home state of Montana, was a really big reason why. Today, I'm a homeowner. I am still a car owner, although it doesn't get very many miles on it. And I choose to live in inner North Portland for the ability to walk, bike, and bus to my office here, to my church, to most of my shopping, and for entertainment. I stopped driving for my work commute 6 years ago because of the increase in traffic. And frankly, it was just causing me to come home really angry and really upset. So I began taking transit at first, line 44. I have slowly added more bike commuting, and now I have a 2-year-old. So as a household with 2 working parents, getting our son to and from daycare is really important every day. It's important to do it safely, but it's also really important to do it predictably and on time so that our careers don't get dinged by that. So we and a lot of people at our daycare and also in my office rely on safely biking in and around the central city to be efficient as families, as employees, and to know we're making a pro-environment choice. So biking's become the best commute option now due to traffic impacting transit for me, and we do it no matter the weather. Transit's my second choice, and I will say my car is a distant third. So I just am urging your support of Central City in Motion to make biking to daycare and to school and to work available to more Portlanders. I think more people of my gender and age and demographic will make this choice when they can be safe and efficient. I loaned my bicycle to a colleague this summer while I was on a trip. And she rode it for 3 days, but was too scared to take up commuting. She has a 7-year-old, and to get to school and to activities and to office, it just didn't feel safe for her. Frequently, I'm told by other mothers at my daycare, I would never bike with my 2-year-old, it's too dangerous. And I don't want this to be a brave choice. I don't like being one of the very few women in my office who bike. So I urge you to vote to adopt this, which will make improvements today for people who really are ready to bike and walk and take transit more frequently. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next up, Serenity Ebert, from a downtown resident, Phil Richmond from the Street Trust Board, and Karen Lichtig from Nosa Familia Coffee. Well, I guess they're not with us, so
Well, Joanne, do you want to fill in for the Street Trust Board member?
jump the line.
I didn't sign up.
Welcome.
Jenny, go ahead.
Excuse me. Oh, here we
Oh,
go.
okay.
Yeah.
Sorry. They're in the other room.
I forgot we have a little overflow. Sorry about that.
Okay, why don't you go ahead? ma'am?
Hi, my name is Serenity Ebert. I've lived downtown for 10 years. I'm here today to urge you to approve PBOT's Central City in Motion plan and to make Better NATO permanent. I feel that the Central City in Motion plan would make travel safe and more efficient for everyone. I depend on public transit to navigate the city. I use a walker or a trike to get around. I feel like or is an important distinction because whichever one I'm using, I don't have the benefit of the other. That means that I ride all year round, not just during the summer. Central City in Motion would make it much safer and more comfortable for me and everyone else to get around downtown. Sorry. I believe that everyone deserves to safely move around. I have gotten much more comfortable cycling through downtown than I used to be, but I think many more people would bike and take transit if they felt safe. I love having the protected bike lane on Better NATO because it is the flattest and most direct route to the steel bridge. I don't have to dodge the strollers and slow-moving pedestrians that are on the waterfront path. As it is now, the unprotected bike lane on NATO is ridiculously skinny and not wide enough for a trike. I very much enjoy being protected from the fast-moving traffic on NATO. This should be a city where people of all ages and abilities feel like they can safely and comfortably move through downtown. We need the projects recommended in Central City in Motion plan.
Thank you.
Thank
Hi.
you.
Hi, I'm Karen Lichtag. I'm here representing Nosa Familia Coffee. We're a locally owned coffee roasting business, and we also have 4 physical locations here in Portland, including a roastery in Northwest Industrial, a coffee shop in the Pearl District, and 2 East Side coffee shops. 2 of those cafes are in the Central City in Motion region. And we're a small business that encourages our employees and our customers to use alternative forms of transportation besides single passenger vehicles to get to work and to visit our coffee shops. We just think it's better for the climate, it's better for people's health, and it's better for creating a more livable community. So with our locations in the Central City districts, in particular, we run against a lot of issues around accessibility and getting to us. We get a lot of complaints sometimes about oh, I tried to visit and I couldn't find parking. But we respond with, why don't you try a biking or walking or taking transit? We're also a member of the Central Eastside Industrial Council, but unlike the official statement from the CEIC, which is expressed some opposition to the plans that would remove some parking, we actually, are in agreement that more people can get to our business when we actually give preference to modes that can transport more people in less space. So buses and more bike parking. So we're in favor of ideas that can help more people access our businesses. We think that the Central City in Motion plan is great for making it easier, safer, and ultimately more enjoyable to get to our businesses. I visited our Central Eastside location this morning, actually around 7 a.m., and the streets were lined with cars, which were clearly of people working in the building who were probably going to look at the 2-hour parking, which is not metered, and move their car around to try to avoid getting a ticket. I think that some of the projects would really benefit our small businesses and getting more people to visit us. And we really look forward to some of the projects for that. Thanks.
Hi, my name is Phil Richmond. I'm here on behalf of the Street Trust. Appreciate you listening to the testimony. I actually called Jillian about an hour ago, kind of fretting over a letter that I'd written for this testimony, and decided that I'll just get up here and be myself. And so, at any rate, I think everyone here has kind of stated what needs to be stated. Commissioner Udaley, I appreciate the fact that you're taking the traffic and transportation class, as I did a few years ago. I think it is a true education on how mobility has worked in the past. And of course, none of us could have anticipated we'd be seeing scooters all over. If you look at news around the globe, they're not showing any signs of going away. And we need to accommodate more and more people in smaller and smaller spaces. Anecdotally, I work downtown. I actually overlook Pioneer Square, so I get to see the human activity that takes place every day around the square. It's a hub of people who are coming from all over the world in many cases, and when they come to Portland, that's what they experience, is the activity around there. So what's happening is, a lot of things. You have MAX, bus, light rail, bike town stations, scooters. I commute every day from Southwest Portland by bike, but this morning I drove my daughter from Southwest Portland to downtown because she's too afraid to cross the street. She's been stuck in traffic for hours trying to take the bus to and from school, and it's increasingly unreliable. So I like to think that she and her peers and future generations will have more options. I'm lucky in that I'm privileged and able to ride a bicycle, but feel very sad for our community when I ride on Broadway and either in a hotel door zone or potentially getting right hooked on Jefferson. And I know that I wouldn't expect any of you to do that. But I know that were the road simply designed in a different way, maybe all of you could. Or maybe my daughter or friends could. And similar thing on 4th, 4th has 2 rows of parking and 3 lanes of traffic. I find riding in the middle of the roadway to be the safest option, and that's ridiculous. We need to accommodate more and more people in smaller and smaller spaces, and that's why I urge you to pass the plan and why the Street Trust urges you to pass the plan. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, our next panel is Addie from Business for a Better Portland. Rithi Koot, sorry if there's no pronunciation key here. from the Bicycle Advisory Committee Chair, and Ryan Hashhagen from Better Block PDX. And I'm looking forward to learning how to pronounce all of your names.
That's great.
Thank you, Council. My name is Adie Leverett. Thank you. I'm here on behalf of Business for a Better Portland. I work for a member company, and as a volunteer, I've been leading our review of this project as well as our efforts to promote better communication between PBOT and our members. BBPDX believes that the economic opportunities that are made possible by Portland's growth should be accessible to all, and one of the ways for this to happen is to make sure that the transportation system of the central city is safe, modern, and efficient. Cities across the continent, as Gabe mentioned, Seattle, Denver, Austin, Calgary, Toronto, all these places are moving quickly to improve their transportation infrastructure. In order to retain Portland's reputation as a center for creativity and innovation, we would be wise to follow suit. BBPDX is strongly supportive of the goals of this project. Our members recognize the close connection between well-designed infrastructure and economic vibrance. Furthermore, we recognize the terrible social and economic costs that will be incurred if Portland fails to meet its climate goals, which are greatly undermined by our over-reliance on single-occupancy vehicles. For these reasons, we must deliver a comprehensive multimodal transportation network, both in our central city and in underserved parts of Portland that BBPDX has advocated for in the past. BBPDX believes that a successful Central City in Motion will help our businesses thrive. Our members, who will be impacted in various and significant ways when the streets are reconfigured, are paying very close attention. PBOT's efforts to engage the community on this project are moving in the right direction, and we are committed to continuing to work with them to ensure that a truly constructive, collaborative relationship is established with business leaders. One thing the current implementation plan fails to adequately address is how success will be defined. As this project moves from concept to design, it's absolutely critical that PBOT establish clear and robust performance metrics to establish a baseline for how streets are performing now and to assess the effectiveness of these new designs. We realize that full performance benefits may not be realized until the entire network is built, but there has to be a more objective way to define success and assess trade-offs. Because people have a basic and understandable fear of change. Traffic modeling, data collection, and studying best practices from other cities are ways to diffuse the tensions that arise from that fear and help make the conversation less about what is unknown and more about the great things that are possible.
Thank you.
My name is Ratik Koot. I'm the chair of the Portland Bicycle Advisory Committee. Thank you, Council, for the opportunity to testify on behalf of the Bicycle Advisory Committee. The committee has submitted written testimony, and I will touch on some of the points in my testimony. I'll also include some personal anecdotes as well. Our committee is highly supportive of the Central City in Motion plan and strongly urge you to adopt it as it is presented to Council. Additionally, we would suggest and encourage you to fully implement all 18 projects, not in 10 years, but within the first 1 to 5 year phase. One of the reasons I was asked to be a member of the Portland Bicycle Advisory Committee is because I was born in Portland. I'm a second-generation Portlander. My parents immigrated from Cambodia searching for the American dream, which included doing well in school, buying a good car, and buying a good home. So when I bought a bicycle in high school, I wanted to bike from my parents' house at 60th and Lincoln to Northwest 23rd. This was about 2003. Coffee time was still 24 hours, and Escape from New York Pizza had the best pizza in town. Or I also wanted to go to the Central Library. My mom was horrified. She told me, it's too dangerous, it's not safe. And for the most part at that age, I didn't feel safe because there wasn't a bicycle network. Lincoln and Ladd were great, but when I got to downtown, I had to hopscotch between the waterfront, the sidewalk, I'm sorry, Commissioner Fritz, and riding in traffic. This plan, if implemented, is what I would have wanted traveling downtown. It builds a safe, accessible transportation network that will encourage thousands of Portlanders, just like my teenage self, to bicycle. Afterwards, I went away to college in Eugene and became a land use planner. Community, collaboration, numbers, and data, they speak to me. The committee and I would like to thank staff for all their work and countless hours of reaching out to the community and stakeholders. Statewide Planning Goal 1 is public involvement. They did a great job. That's why you have so many letters and testimonies in support of this plan. as it's presented to council. From interest groups like the Street Trust, Oregon Environmental Council, and Business to Better Portland, to neighborhood coalitions like Southeast Uplift and the Neighborhood Coalition for Northeast Portland. This is Portland: collaboration, coalitions, and consensus. Looking at the numbers, with the estimated doubling of households and 25% more people working in the central city by 2035, we have to figure out how to accommodate all that growth. Seattle has shown us it can be done without an increase in single occupancy vehicle trips. Even today, as shown in the Downtown Portland Business Census and Survey, compared to last year, more people are choosing to bicycle, while at the same time, fewer people are choosing to drive into the central city. This will only increase as new housing opportunities open within the Central East Side and the inner Portland neighborhoods. I leave you with this. As I think about my future kids and when they become teenagers, will they feel safe cycling downtown? Will I be like my mother and worry about their safety? As they become adults, will they want to live in a central city that it is safe for them? Ultimately, by building this network now, you'll build a network for future children of Portland. Thank you for your time, and the Bicycle Advisory Committee looks forward to continuing to work on meeting and making Portland a safe place to cycle and an everyday part of people's lives.
Hello, Commissioners. Thank you for your time. My name is Ryan Hashigan, and I'm on the Leadership Committee of Better Block PDX. Also, personally, I run a manufacturing business with locations in Old Town and the Central East Side, with each of those locations on one of the projects of the Central City in Motion. Central City in Motion project recognizes that Portland has an urgent need to update and optimize the use of one of our most valuable resources, the public right-of-way. Embedded in the projects of the CCIM is a commitment to creating a safer, more equitable, and more efficient transportation network for all people. We at Better Block PDX strongly support this commitment, but feel the vision of the CCIM, faster and more reliable transit, and a safer network of places for people to stroll and roll is needed immediately. Better Block PDX believes that PBOT should move to immediately implement a cohesive network of quick-build interim projects within the first 2 years of adopting the CCIM as a proof of concept. A growing number of examples from across the nation and around the globe are proving that the best way to achieve a bold transportation vision quickly and with vibrant public support is to build a connected, low-cost, and flexible projects that achieve immediate, quantifiable, and measurable results. With this approach, project designs have much more flexibility to be adjusted according to feedback and also help better inform future design details and implementation. This eliminates the scenario where big investments lock us into designs that don't work as theorized. We ask for you to approve the Central City in Motion project and to create an interim and immediate network implementation plan that includes a robust performance evaluation framework. These metrics of success will allow further decisions to be data-driven and show a return on our civic investment. Implementing these projects as a network will provide a benefit far greater than the individual projects in isolation. And Portland has the opportunity to be a global example by continuing to innovate in project vision, design, and delivery. Thank you so much.
Thank you. All right, next up we have Tara Mather from OHSU, Clint Culpepper from PSU and Sounding Board, and Kevin Neely from PSU.
Hi, thank you, Commissioners. My name is Tara Mather. I'm a campus planner at OHSU, and I've had the privilege of serving on the Central City in Motion Sounding Board to...
I'm sorry, could you move a little closer to the mic?
Yes, yes.
We'll move the mic closer.
Yeah, move the mic closer to you. Yeah.
Not too close, though.
So how's this? So I've had the privilege of serving on the Central City in Motion Sounding Board to provide input at various stages of the planning process, and I believe that the project team's recommendations respond to the growing need for safe and efficient transportation options. And OHSU is encouraged by efforts like this one. As an academic health center, patient care, research, and education are at the core of our mission. OHSU has 16,000 employees, thousands of students, and sees 3,000 patients per day, serving more Medicaid patients than any other hospital in the state. People traveling to our campuses come from all over the city, often traveling through the central city. And OHSU has implemented various programs and policies designed to get people out of their cars and choose other modes of transportation, including incentivizing daily walking and biking trips and heavily subsidizing annual transit passes. So we are very excited about these transportation improvements and look forward to the positive impact that it'll have on the OHSU community.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, Commission. Kevin Neely, the Associate Vice President for Government Relations at Portland State University. Thank you for having us today. We too are here to cheer you on, and unlike those in front of me, we actually have cheerleaders. But we left them on campus today. So we really appreciate your consideration of the Central City in Motion proposal. Portland State University strongly endorses it. I'm here on behalf of the President, and I had to bring my wingman with me today to help if there's any questions. But frankly, I'm not here on behalf of the President. I'm here on behalf of 27,000 students that come onto our campus every day. I'm here on behalf of 7,500 employees that come on our campus every day. We're 50 acres in the downtown Portland core, and this project is vital to Portland State University. Most of those students, as you know, we only have housing for 2,000 students on our campus. So frankly, they are coming onto campus every day from outside generally the Central City core. So every aspect of this plan is important to us. Clint will talk about the work that we're doing to try to make sure that those folks are using multimodal transportation when they get here. I think we have a really great story to tell that will be substantially enhanced by the plan you have in front of you today. I want to close by just talking also about the impact beyond the actual core of PSU that we have. I'm relatively new to Portland State, and I'm always surprised by the impact we have both on the downtown core and beyond the downtown core. 175,000 alumni in our alumni from Portland State University, and 110,000 of those alumni are working and living right here in the Portland metro area. So this doesn't just impact our campus community, it impacts our larger campus community. For Portland citizens in the region in general, PSU is a pathway to prosperity, but that's a figurative pathway. We actually need a literal pathway to get that prosperity moving forward. And this is a wonderful project to help on that front. And with that, I'll let Clint actually talk about the details in the plan that are most important to Portland State University. Thank you.
Hi, thank you for having us here today to hear our concerns and our support. The majority of trips to Portland State are made by alternative modes of transportation, and I'll use air quotes there because for many of us it's not an alternative transportation, it's our primary form of transportation. Less than 25% of our student trips are by car, and over half are by transit, by far the most popular way to get to PSU. There's still room for improvement as students' employees report that better facilities and shorter travel times would encourage them to take transit more often. The priority given to transit in these projects will have a significant impact to the reliability of our transit network and will have immediate benefits for PSU's transit users. For an urban, PSU has been a leader in the promotion of bicycling, piloting the city's first protected bike lane on Southwest Broadway in 2009. We've learned a great deal from this collaboration with the Bureau of Transportation, notably that physical barriers are needed for bike lanes in high traffic areas. We feel that an improved permanent facility is long overdue, as our recent reduction in students riding to campus is partially driven by an increase in traffic and the lower levels of comfort and safety that bicycle riders feel in the central city. With this said, the 4th Avenue and Broadway project is extremely important to Portland State as we advocate for the safety of our students and employees. We've been advocating for these safety improvements for many years, and we feel that this project cannot move forward without them. For an urban campus, improvements to pedestrian safety aren't just about commuting, but about getting to class, the library, and services on campus. These projects would bring significant safety improvements to the crossings of major streets passing through our campus and improvements near some of the busiest transit stations in the city. For our students, their safety is our #1 priority. These projects represent the culmination of a decade of effort to improve conditions for our students and employees as they travel to campus. Improving the travel options that we provide for them is a cornerstone of the university's climate action plan, and these projects will help us to expand those options. Please move forward with these projects, and we strongly recommend moving all projects into the 1 to 5 year timeline. Thank you for your time today, and thank you for all of the work that has been done on this plan by the PBOT staff.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
All right, we have our final panel now, and could have David Bouchard from Bus Lane Project, Gary Cobb from Central City Concern, and Katie Gold from Bike Loud PDX. Either of you can begin, and perhaps.
I think the rule is who sat down first.
All right. My name is Katie Gould. I am one of the co-chairs of Bike Loud PDX. Thank you, commissioners, for being here. I'm going to read some of our excerpts of our testimony that we submitted yesterday. We strongly support the Central City in Motion plan, and we urge council to adopt it. For too many years, Portlanders have seen cities around them initiate bold plans for improving walking, biking, and public transit while we rest on our accomplishments from previous decades. Our bicycle mode share is stuck at 6%, the same as 2011, and our transit ridership continues to fall. Our policies and plans are still visionary, but we have not matched our words with action. And now we have a chance to change that. The CCIM plan alone will not solve all these issues, but it's a strong step forward to being the city that we want to live in, one that acts decisively in the face of climate change, that has clean air and safe streets in every neighborhood, and that moves people efficiently to, from, and around the central city. PBOT's estimates show that with this plan, the number of people walking, biking, or taking transit in the central city will increase from 40% today to 60% by 2035, which would make substantial progress towards our 85% goal set in the 2035 Transportation System Plan. The world of transportation is changing really quickly. The e-scooter pilot has led to 640,000 trips in the last 4 months. When Biketown became dockless and free in May 2018, just earlier this year, riders traveled 162,000 miles, more than doubling usage from May the year before. The pent-up demand for safe and efficient transportation alternatives mean that bold actions by the city can lead to meaningful and immediate results. Making better roadways for these devices and the ones that are coming in the future is of the utmost urgency. We support the recommendation by the Bicycle Advisory Committee to implement these projects within 5 years. And during that implementation phase, we feel like the best approach is to put these designs in the street as quickly as possible with temporary measures so that both residents and businesses can experience the benefits of these places. We would challenge PBOT to a 1-year timeline. With that sort of an implementation strategy, not only would the network be usable very soon, but we'll be able to make adjustments and trial these designs in real time. We agree that the details really matter, and we look forward to working with the excellent staff at PBOT on getting the details right for every one of these projects. You have the opportunity today to show your unanimous support for Portland values. Today, we can begin a new era of Portland leadership in green and efficient transportation.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, commissioners. My name is David Bouchard, and I am testifying on behalf of the Portland Bus Lane Project. I am I'm a bus rider myself, and I live in Old Town, so I have the privilege of taking the any number of bus lines from my apartment, really just about anywhere in the city and the region from that point. And I can speak from personal experience on the issues that our buses are facing as they are attempting to get into and out of our downtown, which is really on all sides pretty much surrounded by various choke points. It's you've got bridges, you've got the hills, you've got the rail yards and the major institutions to our south that basically kind of define the ingress and egress into this part of the city. So it's very important that the buses, which are the most space efficient vehicles for carrying people long distances, are able to get into and out of this part of the city. So I really want to thank you guys for supporting the enhanced transit corridor proposals so far, and on Madison and Burnside, Grand. I really do appreciate we really appreciate the support there, and are looking forward to future support of any projects that are going to increase bus lane access. And also, we are really excited about the potential bus lanes. The bus lane on Burnside would be a huge benefit to bus commuters coming, in downtown. The 12, 19, and 20 connect downtown to the inner east side before they fan out to go east and northeast throughout the city. So Burnside is a really, really important place to have a dedicated bus lane so that those folks can get out of downtown with a very high frequency of service. Also, I use the Steel Bridge quite a lot for bus service. It would be great to be able to approach that bridge faster from downtown, from Fifth Avenue especially. We really need to have that priority there so that the buses aren't getting stuck as they approach the bridge. Once they're out of downtown, for the most part, they move pretty well. So it's creating those bus lanes in downtown is going to make a huge amount of difference for the rest of the region, as it was mentioned earlier. And so there's not a whole lot of miles that need to be striped, but it's going to make a huge difference. The other thing that we are concerned about is the emphasis. There's still a lot of emphasis on parking. We understand that there are a lot of needs which need to be met. Deliveries, access, special access to buildings that aren't always feasible by walking and transit. I understand that, but we really need to cut down aggressively on the amount of street parking that we have, because our curbs are some of our most valuable street space in the century, with bike lanes and bus lanes and potential ride share zones. We really need to be very conscious and intentional on how we're managing the curbs so that we're moving the maximum amount of people possible through our streets. And let's just remember that it's about moving people over all else. And the hierarchy, we have a Vision Zero hierarchy, pedestrians and, cyclists and transit users, they all come at the top, above anyone who is driving a 2-ton piece of metal. Thank you again for your support, especially thank you, Commissioner Udaley, for your strong language around this, and we look forward to future bus lane improvements so that transit is the mode of choice for the entire region.
Thank you. Gary.
Good afternoon, council members. My name is Gary Cobb. I'm the Community Outreach Coordinator at Central City Concern. I should probably start by saying that I haven't heard any feedback from our legal team about the use of our first and middle name on this project. So I'd say that in jest, but thank you for reaching out to us. I say that also because when this project was presented to have us participate, I had to kind of do some extra explaining to some of our residents that wanted to participate in the focus groups about that, this isn't really a Central City Concern project, but it's part of the city. So now that I got that out there to make sure everybody's on board with language, where we're at, we're excited that we were asked to participate. We had 2 focus groups with Gabe and his team, and I think the one thing that we're excited about is the conversation we had around the safety around Burnside, West Burnside. So we had 2 focus groups at our downtown clinic with about 40 people over the course of these 2 meetings. And what came out of that was pretty clear that these are folks that are using Burnside with mobility devices, going to and from our clinic. They're walking. Very few had bicycles, and pretty much no one drove. So what is important about this process was that Gabe and his team reached out to us, which said that they want to hear feedback from folks that are generally marginalized out of these conversations. And so the process in this is really important to us at Central City Concern, and it should be a value throughout any projects that we have in the city involving folks that are basically living at the poverty level, who are using our streets on a constant basis to get to and from the grocery store, to 12-step meetings, to wherever they may be going. So we had some pretty, I would say, enlightening and enriching discussions that shed light on this. And what was really cool is that feedback came back that was given in the first meeting back in the second meeting, that those folks were heard. So these processes are important. Of course, the projects are super important. That's what we're here to recommend that you support. But as we go through this, we still always got to think about how we're getting this information and think about our citizens that are at vulnerable conditions with their health care. And which I want to bring up another point. That it came up in our discussions that what about first responders? How do we make space for them to get to key areas in the city? And I haven't heard that mentioned today, but it came up in our meetings with our residents and folks that use our Old Town Clinic at the 2 focus groups. So I felt really encouraged as the outreach coordinator that our residents and clients of our clinic sat down with Gabe and his team and provided some pretty important information. And so we encourage the council to certainly move forward on adopting this. These projects, particularly, we have an interest in the Burnside downtown where these meetings were held. Just as a reminder, that downtown clinic it's a primary care home for 6,000 patients. And then in and around that 4-block area, we have about 600 residents, and not to mention several hundred employees. So that particular area of Burnside is pretty important to us for safety and maneuverability. Also, I would like to take the moment to think about the future here, and we asked the council, PBOT and CCIM to think about the east side. At 122nd and Burnside, we'll be opening up another primary care clinic that will be home to about 3,000 patients. We'll have 175 units of housing there, and then right down the street around the corner at 126th and Stark, we'll have another 150 some units of housing there. So as we kind of move through thinking about livability and moving around, let's don't forget about our citizens that are living at the poverty level and will be using the streets mainly walking around. So thank you for letting us testify today. Okay.
Thank you. It's good news about Central City Concern and their plans.
Thank you.
Yep.
Appreciate it. Okay. Thank you.
So that completes the invited?
Yes,
Okay.
it does.
So now we'll move to public testimony, and as is our custom, we will ask for people with disabilities or people with young children present to come up first. I thought I heard a young child somewhere in the audience. There she is. Okay.
Let me go and take the next two off the list.
Yeah, why don't you call the next two off the
Are
list?
Pia Welch and Terry Parker, and they'll be followed by Ted Bueller, Tim Davis, and Doug Klotz.
And if you will just give us your name, and you each have 2 minutes, and there's a clock on the table in front of you. So why don't we start with you, ma'am?
Hi, my name is Claire Vlach, and this is Chloe.
Chloe.
And I'm here to testify on behalf of Oregon Walks, which is Oregon's pedestrian advocacy organization. Oregon Walks supports Central City in Motion, and we urge City Council to approve the plan as a whole. Cutting out projects to preserve car lanes or parking will hurt people who cannot afford to own a car and people using more environmentally friendly forms of transportation. We specifically want to call out support for Project 17, Year-Round Better NATO, which will provide separate and thus safer facilities for pedestrians and bicycles. In terms of the parking strategies, we support enhanced transportation demand management and strategies for more efficient use of existing parking spaces, but we are opposed to using public funds to create new parking. Walking is the #1 form of transportation used in the Central City. Therefore, walking should feel both safe and comfortable. As the projects in the plan are developed, we urge the city to consider that sidewalks should include shade trees and pedestrian-oriented streetlights. Intersections should include marked crosswalks on all 4 sides. And conflict should be minimized between pedestrians accessing transit and bike lanes. This is especially important for pedestrians with hearing and mobility impediments. And we're thinking here especially about the design that was submitted for the division bus lane, the division of bus shelters. Central City in Motion will improve conditions for people walking, biking, and taking transit, and will reduce reliance on private cars. This is an important goal given the realities of global climate change, as well as the need to move increasing numbers of people in Portland. Please approve this project.
Thank you
This
for
is
persevering.
the future children that somebody mentioned.
How old is she?
She's just about 3 months.
Thank you for coming today.
Thank you.
Okay, Pia.
Thank you for your time. My name is Pia Welch. I'm the chair of the Portland Freight Committee. We recognize that one of the goals of the CCIM plan is to encourage increased bicycle and transit use to reduce pressure on the existing transportation system, especially in the Central East Side Industrial District. It serves as its historical role as a key wholesale and central distribution center for freight movement and delivery services for Central City businesses. As such, we feel the need to ask how the projects being proposed in the CCIM plan will enhance the nature of this industrial area and the businesses that it serves, and offer the following comments. We have been persistently requesting that 7th Avenue be taken off the list for bike path and put it onto 6th Avenue as for safety concerns, and also because we have been notified that the green loop will be on 6th Avenue, so it seems as though for a long-term logical strategy to designate 6th Avenue as a preferred bicycle route would eliminate the need to use 7th Avenue that is actually a freight route. While a freight compatibility analysis was prepared for this area, it was very general in nature and did not delve into the specifics, such as whether certain size trucks would be impeded from turning onto streets that currently allow access. If trucks are unable to make turns in the CEI, especially in the CIID area, then neither can buses or emergency vehicles, and this can create potential safety issues as more high-density buildings are constructed. This area is difficult to move around now, and yet there is not much information on what to do with the future, let alone the current bottleneck areas, particularly Northeast 11th and 12th Avenue. Moreover, we continue to ask for more in-depth analysis of the truck traffic in this area.
Thank you.
Could I just,
Terry
I'd like to,
Parker. Oh,
hold
go
on a
on,
second. I
sorry.
just want to respond to Ms. Welch. I hear you, and I agree with you on many of these issues, and I want to assure you that we're going to be continuing communicating with Portland Freight Committee and the Central East Side Industrial Council, who has similar concerns, if not the exact same set of concerns. It's a really unique area of the city. It is a former industrial sanctuary, but with more and more residential units, retail businesses, restaurants. So I agree, it's complicated. It comes with some unique challenges. And as I said at the outset, we're narrowing the projects, but there's still a lot of refinement to do on each individual project, and we will definitely be engaging further on it.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So, Commissioner, just to clarify, does that mean that the bikeway could move from 7th to 6th, for example?
I'm not prepared to respond to the individual requests, just that this is an ongoing conversation that does warrant more.
My understanding is
I'll
that
get
it's
stuff.
being looked at.
I'll ask stuff at the end, that's fine. I just wanted to
Yeah.
clarify. Thank you.
Terry Parker, fourth generation Portlander on my dad's side. Per TriMet's latest survey, congestion is the #1 transportation issue. Just 2% of the respondents wanted more bike lanes. Among other things, only 45% think Portland Metro region is going in the right direction, while 42% think the region is off track and people are losing faith in the region. So just how does taking away motor vehicle capacity to add bike lanes represent the public as a whole? It doesn't. It's catering to special interests. Reducing the number of motor vehicle lanes will create more city-initiated congestion, not less. This is especially true if done on 11th and 12th Avenues on the east side and on 4th Avenue and Broadway downtown. More congestion adds engine idling, which in turn increases fuel consumption and emissions. As an example, the changes on Foster increase emissions by 1,180 hours per day. Over the next 20 years, car trips in the Portland area are expected to increase by 49% regardless of how much mass transit service is added. Even in the southwest corridor with light rail, traffic congestion is expected to significantly increase with population growth. The city needs to make more room for cars, not less, by taking away motor vehicle travel lanes and or converting them to other modes. A full and complete environmental impact statement is needed before any decision is made to reduce motor vehicle capacity. Moreover, you wouldn't plan a new development without the financial investors at the table. Motorists, who are the primary funding stakeholders for TSP projects, must have proportional motorist-specific representation on all transportation citizen committees. Without such representation, discrimination exists. Given the results of the TriMet survey, any project that would replace car lanes with bike lanes is ignoring the majority will of the people. Instead of taking away motor vehicle lanes on Broadway and 4th Avenue, a much better route for bikes would be 9th and Park Avenues. On the east side, an alternate route to 11th and 12th Avenue should be found. If the Central City Motion project moves forward, equity requires adult bicyclists must start paying license and or user fees to cover the costs of their privileged street space. Thank you.
Okay, thank you all. Next three.
Next three are Ted Bueller, Tim Davis, and Doug Klotz, and they'll be followed by Chris Matthew, Terry Treat, and Dane Fredericks.
You have names for the record, and you each have 2 minutes.
Yes, thank you. Ted Bueller, a volunteer with Bike Loud PDX. Thank you, Commissioner Saltzman and you, Daly, for supporting the Central City in Motion project and bringing it to PBOT and having PBOT reach out to us and lots of other people and come up with a very good plan, I think. I'm a fan of bicycling. I like to ride my bicycle to all sorts of places, and I like to talk to other people about bicycling and hear why they like to bicycle and what impediments there are to them bicycling. I've been a person riding a bicycle for a long time. I'm also a fan of the City of Portland's 2030 Bicycle Master Plan, passed in this chamber in February 2010. This plan includes all sorts of things like a map, which includes all of the downtown sections that are in the CCIM. It also has some very inspirational words. I want to read you a passage. This is Portland in the year 2030. Bicycling is now a fundamental pillar of Portland's fully integrated transportation system, with more than a quarter of all daily trips taken by bicycle in the city's world-renowned bikeway network. Residents and visitors know that they can easily find a low-stress, efficient, and comfortable facility to get from where they are to where they want to go. And that's the Portland that I've been pushing for in my 10 years of residency here. I'm a little sad because 8 years ago, there were roughly 6% of people choosing to bicycle to work. And now there's still only 6%. We're falling behind here on page whatever this is. It says by the year 2020, 15% of trips should be made by bicycle. And we're still at 6%. We're falling behind. We had funding for the downtown separated bikeway system in 2013, thanks to PBOT and you folks, and we haven't spent it yet. I encourage you folks to pass this, to engineer it, and to build it, and to get us caught up to where we should be, to enable more people to ride their bicycles downtown, and to have fewer people driving their cars on the roadway. Thank you very much.
Hi, Commissioners. My name is Doug Klotz. I support the Central City in Motion plan and urge its adoption. As Bike Loud notes, our bike mode share is stuck at 6% and transit share is falling. We need to have bold plans, and CCIM will be a good start toward achieving travel equity and achieving our climate action goals. But we need to get going. I biked to work in the Central East Side for 17 years and would welcome better bike and transit facilities there, rather than threading my way through loading docks and truck traffic, which was often the case, although I did ride on 7th Avenue in the bike lane there, which makes sense because 7th has a 10-foot wider right-of-way than 6th or 9th or 12th or any of the streets in Central East Side except for King and Grand. So there's a reason 7th has a bike lane. It has more room. The other day I rode downtown. I do a lot of shopping and other business downtown, and I find myself riding on Southwest 4th from Harrison down to Oak, which I often do because I do business at the 1900 building on Southwest 4th. And there's no bike facilities there. I find myself riding in the middle of a lane, which I can do, but I don't think a lot of people would want to bike there. So I would welcome a facility on 4th. I also ride on 5th and 6th, but we heard the reasons for that. And I also shop downtown. I was riding to Powell's. From Powell's, I went over to Director Park, parked my bike, and walked to 3 different stores before I found this sweater. So, but it's all biking and walking. Along with Bike Loud and Better Box, I hope for an early temporary implementation of these projects to get the pattern set while we get the permanent structures in place. Thank you.
Hi, City Council. This is Tim Davis, and I'm addicted to numbers, and I'll try to limit them, and I'll start with one. 40% of the Central City is street space. That's the second highest percentage in the entire U.S. Even Salt Lake City has a lower percentage devoted to streets, and you can feel free to ask me why and how that works afterward.
But who's number one?
Austin, Texas.
Okay.
San Francisco's 25%. Central City in Motion would transfer 1% to bikes and 1% to buses, leaving Portland with still way more room for cars than almost any other city in the U.S. And it's by far the least space-efficient form of transportation ever invented. And active transportation, including transit, gets much more efficient when more people travel this way. And the price tag for CCIM is less than 1/20th the cost of the I-5 Rose Quarter project, and its impacts are all positive, unlike the ridiculous freeway project. And CCIM needs to be finished quickly. 10 years plus for half of these projects is just way too long. And we need to create a couple of signature projects right away, such as 4th and Broadway, so that people can experience the joy of traveling safely downtown by bike. And this would have a dramatic impact on the interested but concerned, which is the overwhelming majority of the population. And that area, that population is just stalled because they don't feel safe at all. And everything in CCIM follows numerous official transportation and other policies that have already been passed by City Council long ago. And even if all 18 projects are fully funded and built right away, they'll still collectively pale compared to what Vancouver already has, or Calgary, Edmonton, Montreal, Minneapolis, Manhattan, any number of other cities. We can't let Portland just collect dust while other cities embrace the 21st century. People expect Portland to be a bike-friendly, sustainable leader. And 2 words, climate change, full stop.
Thank you all. Next 3, please.
Are Chris Matthew, Terry Treat, and Dane Fredericks, and they'll be followed by Rena Jimerson, Mike Bolliger, and Michael Christie.
And are we moving people out of overflow and into the chambers as seats open up? Or is anyone left? Okay, great, thank you.
Okay, greetings. Just
fun
your
in
name
here.
for the record, and you each have 2 minutes.
Hi, Chris Matthew, bike commuter representing Elephant's Delicatessen. We are concerned with the loss of parking lane and especially truck loading zone on Southeast 7th. Elephant's Deli has 25 years at 7th and Clay, 40,000 square feet between 2 buildings, over 200 employees just on Southeast 7th. We're heavily invested, we're on long-term leases. Offices and production space serve our operation all over Portland, 7 cafes and tons of catering. On the east side of 7th, we use about 100 feet of truck loading zone, and on the west side, we have the equivalent of about a 150-foot zone as large vehicles are able to occupy the parking lane and only block the approach to our own small parking lot. We use every inch of this space. Between the 2 sides of the street on a typical day, our delivery team uses a combination of street parking, loading zones, our small lot, and the critical parking lane in front of our lot to make over 100 trips from the central kitchen. In addition, in an average week, we are visited by commercial trucks around 100 times for product deliveries and services. Around 80% of those vehicles are too large to safely back up to our tiny loading dock without obstructing the sidewalk, bike lane, or more. So they typically use the parking lane in front of the approach to our lot or a commercial truck loading zone. Losing much of the parking lanes and loading zones would be devastating, and the results at businesses like ours and ours would be, 1, commercial trucks using the center turning lane to unload, which is a safety issue due to the obstruction it creates to visibility at intersections. 2, vendors in a hurry may be tempted to block bike or traffic lanes while making their deliveries. And 3, best case scenario, vendors would have to push palletized shipments from some distance, creating inefficiency and hazard on the sidewalk or even in the street. Beyond safety concerns, it's an enormous hardship to our operation and businesses like ours. If we move forward, we require solutions to mitigate the impact on businesses like ours and like to work with project decision makers to that end.
Thank you. Would you like to go next?
I'll go next. My name is Terry Treat. I own Cotton Cloud Futons on 7th and Broadway, and I'm a manufacturer. I've manufactured all my products in my store for 37 years, and I've been on Broadway for 25 of them, 15 on 7th and Broadway. And I have 20 employees, which seems very small comparatively, but only 5 of us drive, and rest use public transportation because there is no parking. And there's just some big issues in our city around stagnant, incomes and the way the cost of living. So a lot of people live out, and so it takes away people's livelihood to spend so much time traveling into the city to travel. But if things go through with the way it is, it will impact my business very strongly. And to move my business out or somewhere else I would probably not be in business because I use loading zones and we have trucks come, and Les Schwab is right across the street, and on 7th, that's where the fire trucks use that lane all the time. So I sat here and listened, and there's so many incredible things that we're doing, but there's some impacts on businesses and people's livelihood. So the projects that would really affect us that do not really work in my mind are 3, 13, and 18. And we are asking for more outreach for us, especially Broadway like that, to make that a one-way lane street just makes it so that I know that I don't go to other streets that have just one lane now because I can't get there, or I won't be able to park, or I won't be able to do all those things. So let me finish here. And we did do on 2016, we did the Better Broadway project, and that did not really work. Even giving us a look at what making Broadway narrow would do was not great. So I just really would encourage that. It sounds like there'd be more stuff looked into and really all of us taken into consideration.
So, Ms. Street, where is your business located?
7th and Broadway, northeast.
Northeast 7th.
Right, Les Schwab is right next to me. And they really parked, and then there's another whole warehouse right behind
yeah, I
us
know.
where Blue Star Donuts is, and there's big delivery trucks all day long on that street.
So this is similar to Mr. Matthews' concern, right?
He's
'Cause
a
you're
little
on
further
7th.
down from me.
But it's
Central
all
East
along
side.
7th, it's on the east
Also
side.
on 7th,
Yeah.
closer to Hawthorne.
I did see the project staff nodding when you were talking.
I'm on the top,
Yeah.
he's down there.
Okay, I think that they've got it written down. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Dane Fredericks. I am here representing the Northeast Broadway Business Association, and I want to say thank you to Terry for coming down here. Most of our business owners are small businesses like hers. Most of them don't get down here that often. They don't serve on committees and frankly don't frequently have the ability to understand these projects ahead of time, advise implementation of those projects. As Terry mentioned, there are 3 projects that touch on Northeast Broadway, and many of the businesses I speak about have a lot of concerns about aspects of those projects. Terry also mentioned Better Blocks, the project in 2016, and I can tell you that I frequently hear from businesses about the kind of disastrous side effects of that on their business, on safety. As you know, poorly implemented projects like these poison the well for the next group of projects, which is why we are asking for a Broadway-specific business impact study. I would strongly recommend doing individualized business outreach to those small neighborhood businesses that don't come down here and serve on committees. I forgot to thank you for your time. You've done a lot of really hard work, and we really appreciate that. And congestion impacts all of us, so thank you, commissioners. Thank you, Terry, for coming down here and waiting for about 3 hours. Our board submitted a letter to each of the commissioners and to PBOT, and I hope that you will peruse that.
I have it
Thank you
right
for your
here.
time.
Thank you.
Thank you all. Next 3.
Are Rena Jimerson, Mike Bolliger, and Michael Christie, and they'll be followed by Ian McKenzie, Paul Frazier, and Nathaniel Braun.
Welcome, and we just need your name for the record, and each have 2 minutes. We'll start with you.
My name is Rena Jimerson, and I'm from the Central East Side Industrial Council. Sorry, that's very loud. I'm representing the president, who, Brad Malson, who unfortunately had to leave. Basically, the Central East Side is an important center for Portland's manufacturing and is a designated freight district. Production, distribution, and repairs, the largest sector in our district, comprising over 1/3 of CEID businesses. The CEIC was an active participant in the forming of the Southeast Quadrant Plan and strives to attain the density goals outlined in this plan. Let me start by saying that we do support a lot of the Central City in Motion projects when modified to mitigate the loss of 250 parking spaces and loading zones that would occur if all of these projects were implemented. And we do appreciate that PBOT has involved us in the planning process. However, our repeated concerns and comments, we feel, are not currently reflected in the plan that is being presented. Among some of our concerns, some of them Pia has said, and I will repeat, the project on 7th Avenue would remove 100 parking spaces at once, which is, in the CEID, is a major disruption to our parking system and loading zones, especially in a historically freight district. Little outreach has been done to the business along 7th, a freight route, which is a host to many distribution and manufacturing facilities, as Elephants has just mentioned. PBOT hasn't provided adequate information as to how businesses with loading zones or driveways on this route would be affected. Thirdly, combining freight with a protected bikeway for all ages and abilities, as suggested on 11th, 12th, and 7th, is just unsafe, and this opinion is also echoed by the Freight Committee. Inadequate consideration has been given to using 6th Avenue as an alternative for protected bike lanes, as opposed to on 7th. 6 is already being designated for the green loop, so protected bikeways on both would be a little redundant. Let me end by saying that we're not against bikes, but we feel that this program needs to remember the low-wage jobs, the freight, the loading zones, the lack of parking that the CID has to deal with every day.
Thank you. Mike?
Good afternoon, Council. My name is Michael Bolliger, and I'm the Chair of our Transportation and Parking Advisory Committee for the Central East Side, and we are partnering with PBOT on that endeavor, and we worked very hard over the last 5 years to maximize our street parking inventory, which is about 7,500 spaces as we speak right now. And we're implementing meters as we can. I think we'll be closer to about 500 here with the last group that's proposed to come in. I too, as Rena said, we agree with the lion's share of this program and its goals, but we do have our concerns. As Rena said, with an estimated 250 plus on-street parking spots to go away, currently we support our 7,500 spaces, over 20,000 jobs, an increasing block of residential members that I'm told are going to be approaching 5,000, and a growing number of customers trying to access our growing retail. So a 250 loss of parking spots to many people might not seem too bad. But when you only have 7,500 and there's a huge amount of frustration for people not finding adequate parking already, that's more than a little concern to us. The second part was, again, 7th Avenue. We've recommended 6th. I think it can be modified to accommodate the Green Loop, which is already proposed to have pedestrians there, and also work out how the bicycle traffic can go as well. And leave 7th alone, where we have, again, a large amount of trucks and loading docks to deal with. Thank you.
Members of City Council, thank you for allowing me the time today to speak in front of you. My name is Michael Christie, and I'm an employee owner and operations manager of Modern Times Beer. Speaking on behalf of a business that resides within the heart of the Central East Side, I've come before you today to show my support for the Central City in Motion, but with some concessions and concerns with Project 3. Modern Times is an employee-owned company that has striven to support the community for a very long time. Our core values include quality and environmental sustainability. Having strong bike infrastructure helps to achieve both those goals by reducing reliance on cars. Over the years, we have partnered with organizations that specifically promote everyday riding and have advocated for improved biking infrastructure. At our location on 7th and Belmont, we are witness to a number of traffic accidents involving bikes and appreciate this solution to increase safety. However, as a business operating in the area, we need to ensure that our ability to survive is not impacted by the proposed plan. We need assurances that there will be access to driveways and loading zones along this path. Businesses along 6th and 7th rely on freight trucks for their day-to-day operations. As the plan stands today, our access to load and unload into the brewery would be blocked. We want to ensure our access so that we can continue to thrive as part of the Portland community. Overall, Modern Times strongly supports Portland's plan for increased bike safety infrastructure, but with some assurances that this will not incapacitate the businesses that thrive along this route. Thank you.
So would switching the bike from 7th to 6th work for your business?
We actually operate on both 6th and 7th, so it basically blocks us in. So we wouldn't be able to get anything in or out of our building.
If we move to offset, yeah, thank you.
If it was on 6?
We have roll-ups on both sides, so depending on which way it would go, it would affect us no matter what.
So if there's a greenway on 6th and the proposal on 7th, that would completely shut off your business.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you all. 3.
Next 3 are Ian McKenzie, Paul Frazier, and Nathaniel Braun, and they'll be followed by Kyle Johnson, Keith Jones, and Suvi Wessa.
Okay, name for the record, and you have 2 minutes. We'll start over here this time.
All right, my name's Paul Frazier. I want to tell you who I am, my experience, and your opportunity. I'm a North Portland resident, husband, and proud father of one of Portland's youngest residents. I want to tell you about my bike ride here today. I came down Rosa Parks on that new protected bike lane, thank you PBOT, to the bike highway of Vancouver. Then I hit Broadway, and gone is the relatively low stress of Vancouver and white lines on both sides, and I begin the exciting, terrifying, injury and death-defying gauntlet. Through the trucks loading, blocking the lane, then the door zone extravaganza of the hotels, and finally the right hook risk throughout downtown. Then I hit Madison, which doesn't even have a bike lane. And I honestly tell you, on my way today, I almost witnessed a right hook. The only reason I'm here and not giving a police report is because the biker yielded to the aggressive car cutting him off in the bike lane. So the question is, are we going to act now and prevent a death, or are we going to act after the next biker dies? We need improvements today, not tomorrow, not 5 years from now. I've been blessed to travel around the world, and my wife and I have enjoyed biking in Paris and Vancouver, BC, both cities that have invested in their bike networks. Sadly, my wife won't ride here. She doesn't feel safe biking in her own town. I want to remind businesses that we frequent you, we will continue to patronize you, and other cities have done this, and business has survived. We'll find a way to make it work. Change is always scary. Percent of road was discussed today. The key is a network. Right now, we have a piecemeal hodgepodge of bike lanes. It's not comprehensive. We need a network. As Field of Dreams says, if we build it, they will come. We've seen this. Bridge Pedal, Sunday Parkways, they flood the streets with bikes, walkers, and other wheels. Let's make this our daily reality. Sightline ran a piece today about how great this proposal could be. Their one critique was, are we going to do this fast enough? Let's learn from cities who've done it fast and do this in 0 to 5 years. We chuckle at a year, but why? Plastic jersey barriers and cones could be deployed tonight. We could have an amazing network tomorrow. The only thing that we don't know if we have is the courage and will to do this. I'd urge you to act decisively for your legacy, our city's legacy, and for the future of my 2-month-old daughter.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. My name is Nathaniel Brown. I'm the Government Relations Specialist at the Portland Business Alliance. I'm also a daily bus commuter. I'm here today to express the Alliance's general support for the Central City in Motion concept. We support a number of the projects and have recommendations for others. We've also been fortunate to maintain an active dialogue between our members and PBOT throughout the process. We fully acknowledge that with more than 40% increase in jobs downtown in the next 20 or so years, these investments are smart and they're needed. We're very supportive of investments in public transit, which will allow the bus system to be more efficient and reliable. The Alliance is also in support of the proposed safety improvements for pedestrians on sidewalks and crosswalks, as well as protected bike lanes that provide a more robust north-south and east-west connection through downtown. In October, we sent a letter outlining our various positions on the specific projects impacting the Central Business District. While we are supportive of many of these projects moving to the engineering phase, I'd like to use my time this afternoon to outline the valid concerns and recommendations that our members have about reducing auto capacity on Nadeau Parkway, which is Project 17, 4th Avenue and Broadway, which is collectively Project 2. These are major arterials that commuters, businesses, and customers rely on every day. We believe the concept of 2 new protected bike lanes on the transit mall should be further explored. I know it was explored at the beginning, but we believe several of the trade-offs of that also apply to Broadway and 4th. On Nadeau, we'd like to see further consideration for a protected bike lane through or adjacent to the park. We're really supportive of the proposed sidewalk on the west side of the park, which we also believe indicates the possibility of a north-south bike lane without removing an auto lane. We believe it would be greatly beneficial to the downtown business community if the Bureau agreed to work with us and convene a strategic group, as Commissioner Udaley has suggested, to evaluate these alternatives. We're not here to oppose the Broadway and 4th. We're just simply asking that our alternatives be compared and further studied along with those. We're absolutely committed to having 2 north-south bicycle connections through the Central City, which is why we are supporting that option. We believe that the alternatives proposed if they prove to be unfeasible, we'll absolutely respect that. We want to see the ribbon cut, and we're just hoping for a fair evaluation of a protected bike lane in Waterfront Park and a car-free transit mall. I'd like to reiterate our appreciation for this important undertaking and for our continued collaboration with the city as this moves forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Sir?
Hi, my name is Ian McKenzie, and I'm here to support Central City in Motion, which I believe is a well-crafted plan to move more people in the Central City in a safer and more sustainable way. Over the past few years, this council has worked hard on the Central City 2035 plan, which builds on the progressive legacy of our famous 1972 and 1988 plans. The 2035 plan is centered on the 5 guiding principles of economic prosperity, human health, environmental health, equity, and resilience. I believe that the Central City in Motion helps achieve all 5 principles, but I'd specifically like to talk about economic prosperity. We've made the decision to place about 30% of the city's future growth in the Central City. This means 38,000 new households and 51,000 new jobs in just 3% of the city's land. The zoning capacity we've created is good for the economy, but we need to think how we can move all these new people through the Central City. The 1950s approach would have been to build new highway capacity. We could do that, and many more conservative cities still do. But even aside from the environmental impact, I doubt there's any appetite on this council for acquiring hundreds of parcels through eminent domain for widened or new streets. We could, and maybe one day will, bury the max and start building out a subway system. But even if we start work on that now, that's a decade or 2 out and will cost billions. What we can do, relatively cheaply and quickly, is what's being proposed here today. Protected bike lanes and bus-only lanes can move more people per hour through our streets than the current system does. That makes it possible to achieve the jobs and housing growth this council has already committed to. It makes it possible for more people to access the educational and cultural opportunities in the Central City. What's holding us back right now is that there are lots of people who would like to travel by means other than a car, at least for some of their trips. Right now, many don't, whether that's because they don't feel safe riding a bike in mixed traffic downtown or because the bus is just too slow. Central City in Motion gives people new, good options. We know from other cities, including Seattle and Vancouver, that when given good options, people will choose them. I urge the council to continue Portland's history of smart, sustainable economic development and vote yes on Central City in Motion today.
Okay, thank you all. Next 3.
Are Kyle Johnson, Keith Jones, Suvi Wessa, and they'll be followed by Jessica Engelman, Jim Kogler, and Terry Dublinsky Milton.
Welcome. Name for the record and 2 minutes each, and we'll start with you, sir, over here.
Sure. My name is Keith Jones. I'm the co-director of the Friends of the Green Loop. The Friends of the Green Loop, just because this is our first time testimonying publicly, are a community-led organization that is responsible for advocating for partnering with individual, creating partnerships and raising money to build the Green Loop. We see the Green Loop as a private-public partnership. And so when we look at Central City in Motion, there are a number of projects that provide connection points for the parts that we want to build. So we are very much in support of Central City in Motion moving forward. In fact, we encourage you to move these projects from the 6 to 10 year column over to the 1 to 5. We are very interested in the Lloyd projects especially. I'm also on the Lloyd Community Association, and I happen to know that we are very excited to get this moving. We have a number of private interests who are already ready to engage in building part of the Green Loop. We just did Block 216 a couple weeks ago, and there's a couple others. And so these things moving forward are very important. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Kyle Johnson, and I'm also one of the co-chairs of the Friends of the Green Loop. Sorry, I'm recovering from a cold, so my voice is a little weird. Last week we testified at the Block 216 at the design review, and one of the things that came up was we have a lot of developers who are really interested in participating in the Green Loop and sort of making that happen on the street level, but without sort of guidance from the city yet, they don't really know how that's going to fit in. And these developers are looking to spend money on the streetscape because they're realizing the importance of that streetscape to sort of enhance their buildings. And so I think that it's really important that we move quickly to sort of come up with a plan for what the Green Loop is going to look like. And I think that there's also some confusion that I heard here today as well about sort of what the purpose of the Green Loop is. Is it another sort of part of the bike network where it's for commuters to go in quickly and it's just another bike lane? Or is it more of a park space and something that sort of inspires and enhances the city around it? So I think that coming up with and investing money in a plan for the Green Loop as quickly as possible is going to be really important to clearing that up. I'm also I also started the bike valet at the bottom of the aerial tram. When the aerial tram first went in, they had only planned for 12 bike parking spots. This year, during the summer, we got up to almost 500 people just parking in the bike valet. And this Central City plan will make our jobs a lot more difficult. We're going to have a lot more bikes to park, and we're going to have to find room to park them all. But thankfully, we can park about 500 bikes in the space you can park about 20 cars. So hopefully we'll find that room. So thank you very much.
I thought you said bike ballet, and I got pretty excited.
That would be really cool too.
Bike ballet sounds wonderful too,
Yeah.
but PBOT staff, write that down, bike ballet.
Are all those bike parkers taking the tram, or are some of them going to OHSU in South Waterfront? Do you have any idea?
I would say most people are riding the tram. There hasn't been a lot of development sort of around there yet, and I think that as soon as those like Zidell yards sort of get activated, that we'll see it being used for other people going around South Waterfront. But it's free for anybody to use, and we have a lot of people that use the daycare actually, that have like cargo bikes and like bike trailers, and they can park that securely at the bike valet, so that's really helpful.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Hi, everyone. My name is Suvi Wessa, and I work for company Day Wireless Systems, which installs communication devices in emergency responder vehicles, fire trucks, police, and we do cell tower communications as our primary operations. We have some buildings that we own in the Pearl. We've lost our loading zone and relocated out of there because we can't operate anymore and receive the shipments we need. So we've gone to the east side, and we also have buildings that we're building and renovating, seismic upgrade, and creating energy efficiency for tenants like Modern Times Brewery on 6th and Belmont. And in the process, we're working with PBOT. Thanks, guys. But we are spending quite a bit of money on the infrastructure improvements for the sidewalks and into the right-of-ways on a lot of our building upgrades. And the biggest concern is that our tenants stay viable businesses. They're paying the costs that we are incurring through rents, which then trickle down to the rest of the economy, to our renters in the area, all the way down to, serving the homeless population, which we've been paying and bearing the burden of the cost, the 1% new construction tax that's funding some of these projects. And so our concern is just that we make sure that we're really looking at the freight and the impact to the businesses. If the businesses get charged more, they either aren't viable, we don't have viable streets where we have places for pedestrians to go. And we do want pedestrian traffic to our businesses, but we also need to make sure that we're serving them and their economic needs to stay viable. And we're kind of late to the game, so I would appreciate if we could get a little more connection with the stakeholders in some of these areas so that we can have a voice in the dollars that we're putting in through, special assessments and the SDC fees and the new construction property assessments that we're paying. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you all.
Next three are Jessica Engelman, Jim Kogler, and Terry Dublinsky Milton, and they'll be followed by Emily Geis, Alex Zimmerman, and Jillian Detweiler.
Okay, you each have 2 minutes, and just name for the record, and we'll start with you, sir, over here. Start with you.
Oh, okay. Hello, I'm Terry Dublinsky Milton, and I'm speaking on behalf of Southeast Uplift, unless I clarify otherwise. We voted unanimously to endorse the goals of the CCIM plan and that PBOT should build as many of the projects as quickly as possible. There was a significant number of abstentions. Most of them were because they didn't feel that the dedicated busway went far enough, but the addition of Grand and MLK to the project list will alleviate a lot of those concerns. We were focused on, the discussion was about climate change and safety were the two biggest things, and that this is the gap in the network. If you look at the improvements that PBOT's made recently to Clinton and Lincoln, they'll dump you in the inner east side, and then whoops, you have an unprotected network. Just today, riding here, I come off of Ankeny and go down Sandy to 7th. I was almost right hooked on 7th on the way to the Madison right turn, to the point where I could have kicked his rear quarter panel. That was my opinion. But other projects that are critical is completing the Southeast Salmon Greenway for families who want to ride to the waterfront and don't like the fast-moving bike lanes. Salmon is a great alternative. And the dedicated busways on Burnside and Hawthorne. And so now I want to make a couple of personal comments from being a 20-year resident of cycling in Portland. I agree that NATO is critical. I've been taking the lane in downtown for 20 years commuting. I'm confident in it. Most people are not. I had the same concerns with sidewalks on NATO. What we need for NATO is, for the sidewalk, is a tree assessment, because some of those are Northwest maples. We can rip that out and they're invasives. Others are oaks that'll live for 400 years. We need to build a sidewalk around them. And so if we do the tree assessment, your concerns will be fixed. And so I have 3 seconds left. Thank you for your time. I think this is a wonderful plan, and thumbs up.
Thank you for being concise, too.
I'm going to jump in and go next. My name is Jessica Engelman. I am a resident at Southeast 10th in the Central East Side, so this project is very near and dear to me. I intentionally signed up a little later so I could talk in response to some comments that people have said. First, I have a printout of the plans that Portland City Council has previously endorsed, that this really would be perfect for climate action plan, transportation, I mean the 2035 TSP. These conversations all happen then. Whoever is saying there has not been enough public outreach between the Southeast Quadrant Plan, the 2030 Bike Plan, the TSP again, and then this plan has been living under a rock. I'm sorry. So let's see. 6th, not 7th. Again, in terms of living under a rock, 6th is going to be a completely different type of facility than 7th will. Conflating the two is just going to end up with the same problems that we have on the East Bank Esplanade, with fast bikes and walkers and people trying to walk their dogs and just hanging out, all shoved into the same space because we don't have enough space dedicated for non-automotive uses. And on that note, I actually agree with what Terry Parker said at the beginning, that we need more proportional representation. Currently, we're at a 6% bike share, 6% walk share, and 12% transit. I would like to see the equivalent amount of asphalt on our roads dedicated to those modes. If we think that only 6% deserve only 6% of our roads, well, we only have 3%. So yeah, let's double it. That's equity. Let's see. The loss of parking in the Central East Side. I live in the Central East Side. Believe me, there's a lot that could be done. I park my car for free in front of my house all year round. That these are things that are not being addressed, that could be addressed to free up parking. And finally, the businesses on Broadway. I don't shop there because it's a terrifying street, and maybe if you made it a little less terrifying, you get more business and you wouldn't have to close. So those are my comments. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, I'm Jim Kogler. I have worked with Bike Loud PDX, but today I'd like to talk about climate change exclusively. So in these projects, I see 18 buckets. If you recall, it used to be when there was a fire, we would all gather as a town, and we would form a fire brigade. And when you form a fire brigade, what you want in a bucket, it doesn't matter what color it is, it doesn't matter what shape it is. It kind of matters if there's a handle. I'm in favor of handles. I'll go on the record stating that. But there's no perfect bucket, and that's not important right now. Do they hold water? Yes. I am pro-bucket. And I ask for a yes vote from this council. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you all.
The next 3 are Emily Geis, Alex Zimmerman, and Jillian Detweiler. And they'll be followed by Tony Jordan, Mary Vogel, and Brad Baku.
Okay, welcome. You each have 2 minutes, and give us your name for the record, and we'll start over here.
Hi, my name is Emily Geis. Although I'm an employee of DKS Associates, one of the sub-consultants who worked on the Central City in Motion plan, today I'm speaking here as the co-chair of Bike Loud PDX. I've been sick all week, but I got myself downtown and I took the afternoon off work because I wanted to come tell you why I support Central City in Motion so strongly. It's a plan that would give a lot of bang for the buck. By shifting just 2% of our street space to dedicated bike or bus lanes, we could increase the people moving capacity of those streets by 60%. It's amazing, according to the National Association of City Transportation Officials. And it will only cost $72 million. That's the same as 1 mile of urban freeway. It's a crazy bargain. It's the kind of investment that would help downtown workers like myself. So I work on Southwest Broadway, and I bike or I take transit to work every day. I rarely feel safe biking around in the Central City, especially on Southwest Broadway. Frequently the bike lane is blocked by freight unloading, cabs or Uber drivers parked there to drop off passengers. And so I'm forced to swerve into oncoming traffic to avoid them, which is terrifying. So I've been nearly hit by careless drivers, both while crossing the street on Broadway and while biking along it. So having a protected bike lane that would force people to drive more slowly would be amazing. It would allow me to get to work and to my other destinations more easily and safely. So again, I ask you to vote yes on this crucial plan. Thank you.
Thank you. Julian?
Good afternoon. I'm Jillian Detweiler, the Executive Director of the Street Trust. Thank you for bringing the Central City in Motion plan forward. We urge your adoption today. The piece I thought I could add is that the Street Trust has 3 program areas: education, encouragement, and advocacy. Today you've experienced some of our advocacy, but tomorrow I want you to experience some of our encouragement programs. We want to be your partner to assure that if these facilities are built, that they are used and loved. We have programs like Women Bike, where we met Serenity Ebert. We have programs like Access to Cycling, where we're connecting with culturally specific organizations around the region. And we want to help people both beat the habit of driving and open up the opportunity of getting where they need to go, walking, biking, and taking transit when it is safe and convenient. So we're very excited about the changes that this plan can bring, and we want to make sure we're tapping every part of the market that will be opened up when you make it safe and convenient for people to do so. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Thank you for your time. My name is Alex Zimmerman. I work in the Central City, and I'm here today as a board member for the Street Trust. As someone who does not own a car, I rely on our city's transit, bicycling, and pedestrian network every single day to get me to where I need to go. Living without a personal vehicle has freed me in a lot of ways. It reduces my carbon footprint, it gives me the flexibility to afford an apartment in the Central City, and it keeps me healthy. It lets me engage with my community at the street level on a daily basis. I love my city, but I feel increasingly unsafe walking to do errands, riding my bicycle to work. Transit delays impact my day and make it difficult to arrive on time to work, appointments, other commitments. It seems like every other day I hear similar frustrations and stories from friends, coworkers, and even the stranger sitting next to me on the bus. For too long now, Portland has rested on our achievements. It's become increasingly clear that we can't ignore we've fallen behind on climate and Vision Zero goals. We've pushed Portlanders to the edges of reliable transit service, and we've failed to move the needle on our mode splits. But we can change this today. If you adopt the Central City in Motion plan and invest in the list of proposed projects, we can increase capacity for those in our transportation network by over 60% using just a mere 2% of the street space dedicated to non-auto trips. Our city desperately needs these improvements today to provide safe, efficient, and functional travel. And I urge you to adopt this plan so that we can begin the work to move Portland together toward a more sustainable future for all. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you all. Next three.
are Tony Jordan, Mary Vogel, and Brad Bacot. They'll be followed by Christopher Kopka, Phil Richmond, and Bernard Sanders.
Okay, welcome. You each have 2 minutes, and name for the record. We'll start with you, Tony.
Great. Hello, my name's Tony Jordan. I'm here, I'm Portlanders for Parking Reform. I want to support Central City in Motion. I echo the testimony of all the people who supported it, particularly those who want a fast and quick, cheap implementation. But I'm here to really speak about the second item, which came pretty quickly. I've been on a lot of parking committees and seen a lot of parking policy plan, and I'm surprised that this was done so quickly. Usually it takes at least 6 months of a public process, and then we wait 6 months to get a vote. So to see a policy come in a month or two was surprising. I think that policy, if there were a committee, I would have said that this policy is redundant. We have a lot of good policy we've come up with for parking in the last several years. It's been developed with things like CCIM in mind, and a lot of it is just taking place or isn't even fully implemented on the ground yet, like performance-based parking management or our never-passed permit program for residential permanent and commercial corridor permitting. There's also a lot of parking actually still being built in the Central East Side supply, like at 7 Southeast Stark Avenue, where a large 6-story parking garage is being built. I think that the parking policy undermines our current policy and this project by building new supply that will bring in additional car trips into the Central City, and it muddies the water and makes our current policy more confusing. I also think that the parking policy is not without risk. Prosper Portland has been rumored to often be looking for a place to build parking, so whether or not the city has money, I still think it's kind of risky as to whether or not this blesses a plan to build parking in the future. And any money that's saved by, for example, the Central East Side Industrial Council, like to build a parking garage, or is spent on things that hope a parking garage is going to come along in the future, will be better spent on the transportation demand management, which is a great part of that plan, actually. Item 1, strategy 1, transportation wallet is great. So please pass CCIM, and let's have a better public process for the parking part.
Mary?
I'm Mary Vogel with my own business, Plan Green. I'm both a pedestrian and an urban cyclist, and I've been a cyclist for over 45 years, an urban cyclist. As a member of several of the organizations that have already testified in favor of this proposal, I'm a strong supporter. However, I'm wondering if some of my input at various open houses regarding street trees can be better included as we implement the plan. I've long contended that street trees are one of the most important parts of the transportation infrastructure for both cyclists and especially for pedestrians. For example, walking up the treeless asphalt desert with 5 lanes devoted to cars on Southwest 12th Avenue when it's 105 degrees and smoky is nearly impossible for most people with any health impairment. Well, I love protected bike lanes, and I've recently come back from Vancouver, BC, where I had the opportunity to ride on far more of them than I do in Portland. I find that both cities' DOTs tend to forget about trees as part of their cycling infrastructure. I'm excited to ask that Council approve this concept with PBOT and also instruct them to coordinate with urban forestry to assure that as many street trees as possible are both saved where already existing and planted where they are not, including on bus lines. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, good afternoon. I'm Brad Baker. I want to just echo the support for CCIM. So I'm sure you're aware the UN Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change said we have 12 years to take urgent and unprecedented action to address our carbon emissions if we're going to keep global warming below 1.5 degrees Celsius. So 12 years. These projects are going to take 10 years to finish and will be a step in the direction towards dramatic action, but they won't be fully dramatic action. So I urge you to adopt them and to think what else we can adopt to push the needle further. And then along with that, the funding with the parking management package, there is potential funding for additional off-street parking. Any construction or funding of off-street parking is climate change denialism. More parking will encourage more driving, which moves against our climate goals, our Vision Zero goals, and our transportation mode split goals. So I ask you to really strongly consider voting against the parking policy in front of you. And then finally, I live in Elliott. Our neighborhood association was strongly in favor of CCIM, specifically Project 18, addressing Broadway Weidler in Northeast. Most of the people who live in our neighborhood will not travel by foot or by bike to Broadway. It's very unpleasant. You'd go there and it feels like you're walking along a freeway. It's hard to cross a road. It's hard to bike along the road. It's all auto dealerships and car-oriented design. So I urge you to move that project forward quickly to make it more welcoming for more people. Thank you.
Okay, thank you all. Next three.
Are Christopher Kopka, Phil Richmond, and Bernard Sanders, and they'll be followed by Lori Schmidt, Kevin Neely, and Sarah Iannarone.
Okay, I think we're getting to the end. I think we already had
Okay.
Kevin Neely earlier today. And Phil Richmond, yeah.
Okay, thank you. Let's go ahead and go with, is there Bernard Sanders?
It is.
Thank you.
Yes.
Lori Schmidt, Kevin Neely, and Sarah Iannarone, come on up.
Okay, well.
Darcy Owen?
Okay, we got three. Okay, name for the record, you have 2 minutes. We'll start with you, sir.
All right, my name is Bernard Sanders. Good afternoon. I'm the co-founder and chief technology officer of CloudBolt Software. We founded CloudBolt 7 years ago. Today we're nearing 50 full-time employees with 10 in our Portland inner southeast office. With demand for our product booming, we'll be growing to 35 employees in Southeast by the end of 2019. The city's biking and transit infrastructure is a big reason I moved here, and the reason these 10, soon to be 35 jobs were created here. Before I moved to Portland 12 years ago, I fell in love with the city when I was biking around, taking the MAX right from the airport, reveling in the walkability of the place, and seeing that it was one of the few places I could live in our country without needing to use a car a lot. I chose to move here, and CloudBolt's engineering teams came to be built here because of our city's prior investment in multimodal transit infrastructure. About half my employees bike to work, 1 or 2 use transit or walk, and the rest drive. The driving is not going to scale to accommodate the kind of growth that Portland is going to see in the coming years. We stand at a crossroads, and we have to figure out how to make alternative transportation the most appealing choice for the majority of our residents. This plan accomplishes that, and we need it as soon as possible. Ideally, I'd like to see it completed in 2013. That would be the maximum benefit to my employees. It's going to directly help my employees and keep Portland the kind of city that I fell in love with 12 years ago. I urge you to support it, and thank you for your hard work for the city of Portland.
Thank you. Ma'am?
Hello. My name is Laura Schmidt. I work for Grand Central Bakery in Northwest Portland. I'm here to represent all the people that work there that bike to work, including all of the owners. We're all bike advocates, and we would like to see more of our employees bike. I'm here because I bike to work 5 days a week, 13 miles one way from Gresham. I'd like to see my commute become safer because in the last few years I've seen bike routes and streets become increasingly more dangerous due to an increase of drivers on these streets. I choose to commute to work by bike since I moved to Portland 7 years ago. Over the past 7 years, my bike commute has changed and varied in location, routes, and mileage due to me moving and my work locations changing. But one thing that has not changed in those 7 years is that there are more and more drivers on the road, and biking routes are becoming increasingly more dangerous and less accessible due to the increase of traffic. More and more cars are now taking these side streets to avoid the busier main streets to reduce their own drive times due to traffic congestion. These drivers often are in a hurry and drive in ways that put bike commuters at risk, also pedestrians. I have many reasons that I bike to work to stay in shape. I'm an avid bike racer. It's a good way for me to incorporate staying in shape and get my commute done in the same time frame. I also bike because it saves me money. I don't have to put maintenance into my car. I rarely have to put gas in my gas tank. And I also find it as a great way to leave stress, where when I drive to work, I find out that I am much more stressed out because I'm sitting in traffic. I also like knowing that it reduces my carbon footprint
Every May, Grand Central Bakeries promotes and participates in the Bike More Challenge. And as an avid bike racer, I like to encourage my coworkers to ride and bike to work. And the number one reason why they don't do it and tell me that they can't is because it's dangerous and they're afraid to. So I'd really like to advocate that we make our streets safer and to please vote and adopt the Central City in Motion plan to keep Portland moving in the right direction.
Okay, thank you. Sir?
Hello, my name is Darcy Owen. I am the owner of the Portland English Language Academy, which is we teach international schools. We teach English to international schools. We've been in downtown Portland and now the Lloyd Center since 1989. The bike map and the transportation map for Portland is something that we literally hold up in front of our students around the world, saying this is why you should come to Portland, because Portland is easy to live without a car, and it makes it a very, very attractive option for international students. And what is good for enrollment at our school is good for the local economy. There's about 5 programs in the Portland area that are similar to ours, and I'm not here speaking for them, but I just kind of did a calculation. It's probably about $35 million a year to the local economy in homestays and business expenses and payroll. And to be able to hold that up as why you should come to Portland is a very strong draw for Portland. I'm also a daily car commuter, and it takes most of my commute to drive from Lloyd Center to I-5. And now Portland is starting to feel a little bit like what I say no one would want to go to Seattle for, is because when you leave your work, you don't know anymore how long it's going to take you to get wherever you're going. And Portland is quickly becoming like that. I have employees who don't want to take available afternoon classes because they don't want to deal with the drive home. I have employees, including me, who are pushing to leave by 4 o'clock. And that's lost productivity. And productivity is always this number that you read about in the magazines and newspapers, but that's a real thing that's happening on the 3rd floor of the Lloyd Center. So for my employees as well as the students, Portland is getting to be an expensive place to live, and we need to do what we can to make it so they don't need a car to live in Portland. So that is why I am encouraging you guys to pass this, to set Portland up for the next 20 plus years, and for us to be able to hold it up, the map of Portland, and say this is a world-class city, and show that it has the reputation that it deserves.
Okay, thank you all. We have 3 left.
I think we're on, was there Alan Kessler, Cassandra, Chris Rawl, Jay Veronica, and the last 2 I show are William Kenny and Edward Bailey. Also, if you signed up and didn't hear your name, you can come on up.
Or if you wish to testify and you didn't sign up, this is your time.
You're the last one standing. Well done.
Okay. Go ahead, sir.
Hi, Commissioners. I'm Chris Rawl. I'm a resident of Southeast Portland. I want to encourage you to move this plan forward as fast as you can in a cost-effective way so you can do more faster. A couple quick anecdotes. One, just a personal anecdote. Recently, my family, we converted our family bike to electric to make it easier, and opened my eyes to the possibilities in terms of where you can get to, hauling kids. I'm seeing more and more electric bikes out there. So and when we throw that in with scooters, our bike infrastructure is there's a whole bunch of potential of sort of new uses, electric skateboards, these one wheels. So anyway, there's a lot of opportunity for that to really fill out, and so we need to complete the network. The other thing is that in my day job, I go to Seattle a lot and see what they're doing on transportation and how it relates to business. And they have grown the number of jobs in their downtown by, 60,000 jobs since 2010. And they've reduced the drive alone rate in that time from 35% to 25%. Over the last 17 years, they've reduced the drive alone rate from 50% to 25%. So you take the long view, how are you going to fit more jobs in the central city? You're not going to do it by having
the same number of people, same proportion of people coming via car. They're just not going to fit. If we want to fit more jobs in our city, they need to come by other modes. So I'll give these handouts out, but yeah, I encourage you to move this plan forward, move it forward quickly, be cost effective about it so that you can do more faster. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Okay, that completes public testimony. Did we want to have staff come back up?
Yes, please.
Okay.
First, thank you very much, everybody, for testifying. This has been extremely helpful to flesh this out, and obviously there's a lot of support for the plan in general. I think it's just maybe a couple of details. So I wanted to particularly address the issues for the Central East Side Industrial District. Project 3 in particular says that there will be loss of parking and loading zones on 6th and or 7th. So how much flexibility is, what is the plan for a business that relies on being able to make pickups and deliveries?
Sure. Yeah, so, as was mentioned previously in testimony, the reason that we have landed on 7th as a bikeway is its connection to Sullivan's Crossing Bridge, new bike, pedestrian, and emergency response bridge over I-84, and just providing a continuous, non-meandering route. The other reason is that 7th is a wider roadway and has current bike lanes that can be improved. We are not proposing to remove all of the loading or all of the parking on 7th Avenue. We heard early on in our public engagement that preserving the center turn lane on 7th Avenue was important for freight mobility and access, so that's what our current plan shows. But if it does turn out that preserving parking on both sides of the street is more important than that certain center turn lane in some sections, we're totally open to that. We, in no case would we be removing all the parking or all the loading on any block face. We'd be preserving parking and loading along the entire street.
So I did hear concerns about other areas, but we have specific policies about the Central East Side Industrial District. In fact, we call it the Industrial Sanctuary, and it's not intended to be the next Pearl. In fact, I've been very concerned that it's not supposed to be lots of residences, lots of trendy businesses, lots of non-industrial activity. Right. So I'm, colleagues, very concerned that we're kind of at the crunch point here of saying that we're going to prioritize through traffic of bikes over these vibrant businesses that provide good family wage jobs.
Right. I think one other important piece of context is earlier we were looking at routes, and actually Southeast 9th was the preferred, that was actually what was in the bike plan for 2030. And through feedback from freight users, that was part of what pushed us to designating 7th as the priority route, in part based on trying to preserve the important freight uses that are happening in that area. 7th is actually the street within the Central East Side, in addition to MLK and Grand, that has commercial zoning in it. So it is actually the place in which we expect to have a more variety of uses. So we continue to think that it's the best location for this through route. Specific to the loading and parking issues, this is what the next stage of the process does, is once we know the routes we're working on, that's when you go deeper into specific, clipboard-based understanding of each business's parking and loading needs and trying to understand if there's creative solutions to them. So for the specific concerns for elephants, that's exactly the type of work that staff would be doing next, is understanding exactly, what are the functions that they're needing to operate in.
So would you be comfortable with another, be it further resolved, that would say, be it further resolved that project design must ensure freight access and convenient loading zones for businesses in the Central East Side Industrial District?
I think so, yeah.
I'll second that.
Thank you.
I wasn't here, but if memory serves me correctly, past council pretty significantly changed the zoning in what was referred to as the industrial sanctuary, and the reason I am so painfully aware of that is that it impacted a nonprofit that I co-founded that occupied a building that had been zoned for light industrial and then was changed to retail, and the rent was tripled. So can someone tell me what the current status of that zoning is?
The bit of it, maybe I'm the best attempt at that. as I recall, and council members may have more details because of their personal experience of it, is that overall in the Central East Side, an industrial employment overlay was added to the base zone. And then I don't believe there was that much changing to the zone along the main corridors, but it was already there present as an entitlement, is my recollection.
And it was a subject of huge debate as to whether this would pluralize the Central East Side. And certainly wasn't prepared to come with the comprehensive plan policies on the Central East Side district, but I know that there are a lot of them saying that this is one of our key jobs areas.
Absolutely, and I think what came out of the Central Southeast Quadrant Plan and then was incorporated into the Central City 2035 plan was a confirmation of the importance of, especially of freight uses and industrial uses in the Central East Side, particularly for that consolidation function, that warehousing and consolidation distribution function. You know, our salads and our sandwiches coming from elephants, that's exactly the type of activity that we continue to believe is really appropriate there. But I guess I very much feel that there are design solutions that, you know, through sort of creative work together, we can come up with design solutions that continue to help the brewery that I've not yet visited, but is now on my list, and these other uses.
And I noticed you taking notes about Broadway and the other areas, and I just am focusing on the Central East Side because of its designation as a sanctuary.
Commissioner, I'm happy to support that amendment, although I believe that we would be taking those concerns into consideration, and there has been a little bit of fear in the community about this plan, an assumption that we're done with the outreach and that all these plans are carved in stone, when really we're just narrowing down from hundreds of potential projects to 18. And then the next step is further outreach, involvement, design, and build.
They're not without challenging compromises need to be made, but this is what we do.
And you will need to come back to council with each project to get agreement on specifically what we're going to do in the contract for it?
I think the contract scales probably through a clustering of contracts is what I would guess. We probably wouldn't contract each of them as separate. We'd have a package that one contractor would deliver.
Something will come to council where people could come and say, hey, you've completely put me out of business. I mean,
of course,
Subi Wessa said that they had to move from the Pearl because they lost their loading zone. I don't want that to be an outcome from this, and I know you don't either. Thank you, I appreciate that. So my only other question then is, what about the issue of first responders and how they get through? If there's only one through lane, for instance, on NATO, how are cars supposed to move over to let the first responders through?
I don't know if Don's still in the room. We had a fortunate to have a technical advisory committee that helped us deal with a lot of these issues. One of the exciting things about dedicating spaces to transit vehicles is that those lanes that work well for prioritizing buses also provide.
No, that's clear. I'm just thinking for instance, Better NATO. Right now, it's a temporary bollard thing, so presumably a fire truck could put the lights on and blow through all the bollards. But once you make it permanent, that's not going to be the case. So how would you move cars over?
I haven't looked at the details of the design. That would be part of what we would be incorporating, is the ability for the emergency response vehicles to use that space still, but you may have gone deeper into it.
Yeah, Commissioners, good evening. Don Ross, Deputy Chief, Portland Fire and Rescue. I'll just preface, before I talk about NATO, I'll just say that I was brought in as a technical advisory committee member of the initiative, and I will say that Portland Fire and Rescue had every opportunity to look at every design, all the 18 bundled items that they presented to us. They overlaid the concepts over our major emergency routes, our secondary emergency routes. I had a chance to look at hard copies of them, so I did review them. With regards to NATO, I personally looked at that one. The issue, better NATO worked because we don't need to respond northbound. It's southbound is the route that is imperative, because Station 1 pulls out of there and they head south, and they access the Morrison Bridge, they access all the major routes that get into the west side. So they use that route just to come home, basically back to the fire station. We have a rear entrance on First behind the station, so we don't have to back into the station. It didn't affect us that much. They can use this Burnside Bridge to access, to get across the river to the east side, so where they don't need to use the steel. The steel is not a good option for Station 1 anymore because it's been converted to one lane, if you notice, eastbound. So there really was an impact. I personally talked to the members of Station 1. It just wasn't a negative impact on us. And then I've seen the designs that they have for making better NATO, or it would be the concept, or it'd be permanent. And I don't see an impact with that. And some of the designs they did propose, and Gabe did, moving them into the park, correct, on some of them, which you're not for, obviously. But with that, I didn't see a negative impact on NATO at all in the emergency response routes.
So if there's a health incident or something incident in Waterfront Park, that you'd have to go on the other side, you'd be coming from Fire Station 1,
right,
going down, you wouldn't then be able to get across and into the park, would you?
We still have the access at the, what's the park? Where they can still head south for a couple blocks and then turn at Main, okay? So we would have access into the area right there. But really, we can't drive to a lot of aspects into the park because of the grass. They're very heavy rigs. I mean, basically, we do have to go on foot for the medical events that occur on there, the cyclists that, have accidents.
And if there was a fire, you would park across the street and run the hose.
Yeah, and there's just not a lot of structures in the park itself.
Well, I was just thinking during the festivals, the grease fire gets you.
During the large festivals, I review the medical plans. We usually have dedicated services. There's, I require first aid tents, a communication plan, a medical plan. For the larger events, require a medical standby of an ALS ambulance from a private ambulance company. They usually stage those on Main and NATO.
Thank you. That's very helpful.
Yeah.
And thank you for staying throughout this hearing. That's very helpful. Thank you.
I'm glad I did stay. I had a feeling I might get a subject matter question. They just happened to be at the very end, so.
Very dedicated. Thank you.
Anything else?
That's all my questions.
Any other questions?
Well, I do have a courtesy to ask. I think Alan Kessler was out of the room when his name was called. If he could possibly be allowed to give, you only have 2 minutes.
Sure.
Is that acceptable?
Sure.
Okay.
Sure.
And full disclosure, Clint, Tony, and Alan are all in the transportation class with me, and I think, just all came to cheer me on today. So, thanks, guys. Can't wait to hear your presentations tonight.
Thank you so much for that courtesy.
Class tonight?
Class tonight.
Oh, my God. Okay.
It's a 13-hour day.
Okay, go ahead. Give us your name, Alan. And
My name's Alan Kessler with the Portland Bus Lane Project. I want to thank you so much for your words at the intro to this. It was fantastic, and you said most of what I would want it to, so I'll keep it short. My biggest concern is that we're spending a bunch of money, and we need to make sure that that money is spent in line with our goals, with Vision Zero and the modal hierarchy. When I was lobbying before for changes to Main during the last project, the paving project, there was a lot of talk about needs to do public outreach and traffic modeling. Traffic modeling is at the bottom of the pyramid, and buses are up top. So I don't think we should be spending our time and our money on figuring out how cars are going to get around the block. Let's just do it. Let's do them as pilot projects. Let's do them quick. Let's see what happens. That's in line with our goals anyway. We know that induced demand is a thing that exists, and it's not well represented in the models. So yeah, let's do it fast. Let's try to get it within a year to 5 years. Let's try to get all of the projects in. Let's try to get it funded. And let's fix the city before the oceans boil. Thanks.
Thanks.
Thank you. Yeah, I think.
So I appreciate the discussion we just had about the Central East Side, but I guess I was also concerned about the issues raised around Northeast 7th and Broadway and about Broadway itself. And I don't need any explanations at this point, but I just want to make sure those issues are addressed too, because those are small businesses and we need to make sure that they prosper. Okay, so we have one amendment, and that's I guess your amendment is to 1183. So we'll.
Yes.
There's no further discussion. Call the roll on Commissioner Fritz's amendment.
Just to, I'm writing it out for you, but it's to insert after the first and be it further resolved that project design must ensure freight access and convenient loading zones for businesses in the Central East Side Industrial District. No, give that to Carla. Thank you.
Okay, please call the roll.
Udaly?
Well, I want to thank everyone who came here today to testify, and especially those of you, including my colleagues, who've stuck it out to the bitter end. I feel like we should have cookies and juice for you in my office. Sadly, we don't. I think they're all gone, and I don't have my badge, so security, I may need some help getting back into my office. I want to especially thank a few people. I want to thank Serenity for coming today and bringing her trike and giving us a really visual reminder of challenges that people face who have mobility issues. I have a son in a wheelchair, and lots of people that have no experience navigating the city with mobility challenges like to give me lots of advice and opinions about the decisions I've made for my family, about my transportation. What they don't seem to understand is, yes, I can put my son in a bicycle cart and haul him around. He weighs 100 pounds. I've got nowhere to put him at the other end of our trip if I don't have this wheelchair. Serenity, I don't think, can take her trike onto public transportation, so if she's choosing the trike, she's not on the bus. If she's taking the bus or using a walker, she doesn't have her trike. So, as you know, accessibility and inclusion are major issues for me, and I know that we are going to make significant improvements in that realm. I'm thankful for that. I want to thank Jessica Engelman for this handy cheat sheet she made for us. I've only been here 2 years. This is so helpful. I will be reading back through it, and it's just a reminder of how vital it is that community holds us accountable for promises that we've made, because, you know, people, this is item 1,183 that we've heard this year. It is almost inevitable that as we move along and commissioners change and staff changes, that things can fall through the cracks, and we need help. I want to thank PBOT staff, although they continue to ignore my requests for feasibility studies on water slides, pneumatic tubes, and jet packs. I still love you guys. You're a great team to work with. People who testified you couldn't see, but staff was sitting behind you, often nodding their heads and taking copious notes. As we've said repeatedly, this is not carved in stone. We're picking 18 projects, and the next step is more engagement, more input before we design and build them. I want to thank former Commissioner Steve Novick for starting this process. I want to thank Commissioner Saltzman for his leadership of the Bureau. And I want to thank bicycle and pedestrian activists. I've been cycling in Portland for over 30 years, and although I bike less than I did in the past, I know that it's easier and it's safer, although we do have a lot of work to do. I think about this quote from Dan Formosa a lot. He's an industrial designer, and I'm paraphrasing here. It's when we understand and address the needs of the extremes, the middle will take care of itself. For too long, we've only been addressing one end of the spectrum, which are car drivers, while neglecting the other end until relatively recently. So if it seems like we're devoting a lot of time and resources and money to bicycle and pedestrian infrastructure, we are, and it's completely warranted and very necessary. It's only been about 100 years since streets began to be thought of as strictly conduits for cars, but for millennia before the combustible engine, streets have served a multitude of purposes and a variety of users and modes of transportation, well, mostly horses, carts, and people on foot, but we all own the streets. Critical Mass had a slogan, "We are the traffic." When once a month, a mass of people would gather on bicycles and take over the streets, and were pretty vigorously and sometimes violently opposed. I have a motto for people who are single occupant vehicle drivers, frustrated and stuck in traffic, which every once in a while I am one of them, although I almost am never driving alone. You are the congestion. And it's imperative for climate change, public health and safety, equity, and our collective quality of life that we deeply invest in pedestrian and bicycle infrastructure and greatly improve public transit. We can't please all the people all the time, but we can do the most good for the most people. We need better education on how to share the road for all users. I'm switching gear because this is what I do. I just jot down random notes on Post-it notes and try to put them in some kind of coherent order. We can improve our efforts on the local level, and I'm specifically thinking educating drivers and cyclists on how to share the road, but it's really a state issue as well, and we need that Oregon driver manual to reflect changes on our streets that have happened over the last 30 years. It's clear we have more work to do on the Central East Side and on 7th Avenue, and I just want, if anyone's left in the room who gave testimony on that, I am very committed to working those issues out. I was a small business owner for 22 years, and we don't want to put people out of business or chase them out of the city. We just want to make it safer for everyone and reach our climate change goals. So I've heard other very legitimate constructive criticisms today, parking, for instance, and I'm also committing to do kind of additional outreach and input on that. But please, everyone, know that change is coming. You're going to see more construction on the streets next year than we've ever seen, perhaps, in the history of our city, and I'm sure our phones will be ringing. And that change is coming for better, for worse, but we're really determined to get out ahead of it as far as the population growth and climate change, make up for lost time. I'm going to put one pitch out here before my vote. Does anybody know what a Dutch reach is? Okay, and so I want to suggest that we start promoting Dutch reach, which is simply when you are parking on the street, especially if there is an adjacent bike lane, you open the door with your opposite hand, which necessitates a turn of your head, a check in your mirror to make sure there's not a cyclist coming up that you're going to door. It's a really dangerous situation on the streets out there. Dutch Reach could also suggest we aspire to be more like them overall with our bicycle infrastructure. I'll leave it at that. Thank you, everybody. This was great. A heated topic.
That was your statement on the amendment.
And
Do you have a statement on the resolution, too? Oh, okay.
I just don't want you to leave.
Has she been sitting here smirking the whole
No, I've
time?
been trying to think to myself, how can I make this gracious when I just say aye?
Well, you know, it doesn't matter. I wanted to catch as many of you who were still left as possible.
Okay.
I vote aye on the amendment, and I'll have very little to say on the next two items.
Fritz.
Commissioner, I love your enthusiasm, especially for transportation. It's absolutely delightful, and I appreciate you accepting my amendment. Aye.
Saltzman.
Aye. So now on the main resolution, 1183.
Udaley.
Start all over. It was great to do it again.
To be honest, you did throw me off on my final closing sentence, but I've lost it. And I need to have dinner before class, so I will just happily vote aye.
Fritz.
Thank you for this presentation. Thank you to Art Pierce and Gabe Graff, especially for the briefing you gave me, all the explanations, the continued discussions and for agreeing to my amendment, which I know you will take to heart. I need to state for the record that I am a property owner. I co-own a condo at 8th and Flanders, which is affected by Project 16, where we're proposing to close Flanders between Park and 8th. And my son, who's a cyclist, my daughter-in-law, who's an avid pedestrian, are both very supportive. And I've just put that on the record so that the rest of the condo owners can't say that I slid it under the... so there it is. This is really important. I'm a huge pedestrian and transit advocate, and because my son's a cyclist, and because of the many benefits for those who are, I'm also an avid cycling advocate, even though I will never be on a bike, regardless of what the improvements are, because I just like walking much more. I like to be able to look around and talk to people, etc. Thank you to Commissioner Saltzman, who was Commissioner for a lot of the time that this work was being done. These things, as was mentioned, don't come just overnight, and this one has been in the progress for a really long time, as was evidenced by Bernie Bottomley from TriMet, thanking Leah Treat, former director, and Commissioner Novick, and now Commissioner Udeli, thank you for bringing it in for the landing with, as I say, delightful enthusiasm. And
Delight is my middle name. For real.
actually, I remember that.
Sorry.
But I didn't mean to imply that, because it's been a closely guarded secret until this point, just in case. So obviously we've been in council for a very long time.
Too long.
Too long, I'll shut up. Aye.
Saltzman.
Well, I want to thank Commissioner Udeli and the Bureau of Transportation and all the stakeholders that are here today. This is something that needs to happen, but I guess I also want to just express a couple cautionary notes. We talk a lot about, and we hear the horror stories from cyclists all the time about the right-hand hooks and everything else, and I think we have to realize that motorists increasingly driving from Gresham. I was odd that we had a young woman here who bicycles to Gresham every day and back. But with housing prices being what they are, we have more and more people, ordinary people, who work in places like the Central East Side Industrial District. They usually have to be at work at an incredibly early hour. 8 o'clock's late in the Central East Side. A lot of them get to work at 6, 7. That when people are worried about finding a parking space, they're worried about the congestion that's when when they're talking on their phones and texting on top of that, that's when these things happen. And so there's almost a blind spot to this discussion, and I know it's an intentional blind spot that PBOT doesn't like to talk about, and that is we need to rigorously enforce our traffic laws. And so I know that it's a blind spot in part because it's another bureau's responsibility. It's also a blind spot in part because it rubs people the wrong way on discussions about racial profiling. And I think we sort of need to get over that and realize that for these strategies to be successful, you need to have good enforcement of traffic laws, bicycle laws, pedestrian, jaywalking, everything needs to be enforced. Otherwise, we're going to continue to have these tragedies despite what we do. I mean, I like protected bike lanes a lot. I mean, I think that's a real important measure to get people like me and all the people we heard testify today whose spouses won't ride because they're too afraid. Well, that's me too. I won't ride because I'm too afraid. And there's a lot of people like that. And we need to, if we're going to be successful in getting our commute rates up in the bicycle category, we need to overcome that. And particularly with women, as I've heard us told many times before. And that's not going to come it's not going to come just by engineering and design. It's got to have enforcement. And we can't be afraid to not talk about enforcement of our traffic laws because, we are on another record pace for pedestrian deaths this year. Distracted driving is as bad as it's ever been, just my casual observations. Nobody pays attention to the laws around distracted driving. So unless we do that, these strategies will all look good, but they're not going to produce the numbers that we're all hoping they're going to produce. So I just hope we will get serious about that as well. Again, good work, everybody. Aye. So resolution 1183 passes, and now 1184.
You, Daley?
Well, good thing there's one more item because I forgot some thank yous. I want to thank Congressman Blumenauer for kind of setting us on this path of bicycle and pedestrian advocacy. I think the quote was, he wanted Portland to be the best European city in the United States.
Wait a minute, that was Charlie Hills.
Oh,
That was
was it?
Charlie Hills, yes.
Are you sure?
Yes, I'm sure.
Oh, boy, I didn't mean to.
You got two people.
Okay, well, Congressman Blumenauer did speak to our class a couple weeks ago, and he used that quote. So, bad news, we're not quite there yet. I also want to thank Mayor Adams for his advocacy around bicycling and bicycling infrastructure. And finally, I want to thank the two Terrys, Terry Parker and Terry Dubonsky Milton, who couldn't be more diametrically opposed, but are almost always guaranteed to weigh in on these issues. And I appreciate you. And I vote aye.
Fritz?
Like Commissioner Daly, I'm glad to have another vote. I really thank Mi-San Kwan on my staff who did a lot of the analysis for me, and I appreciate that very much. This is the vote on the parking supply. I appreciate you working with the Central East Side Industrial District in particular on the parking strategies. And I do encourage us all to remember that transit doesn't run very much at night. So if you're a swing shift worker, you are going to need to park, and that means you're probably going to need to park around 3 o'clock in the afternoon, which needs to be taken into account. Because when I worked at OHSU, I worked swing shift, I get out at midnight. It would have taken me 2 hours to get home on transit. And that included a mile walk at the end because the bus stops running at 10. So it's really important to remember that, especially for low-income workers, parking can be the difference between being able to, as was mentioned, pick up your child from daycare and various other needs of life, or even get to your second job. So we don't want too much parking, but we do need to have enough parking, especially for those who really need it. Aye.
Saltzman?
Aye. The resolution is adopted, and that is our last order of business. Our next meeting will be Wednesday, November 28th at 9:30 in the morning. So, did I get that right?
21st.
November 28th?
No, we're meeting next Wednesday, the 21st.
Yeah, we're here.
21st?
Oh, we are? Yes.
Oh, okay. Okay. Well, I was going to wish Portlanders a happy Thanksgiving, but I guess I can wait till next week to do that. Okay. Okay, I didn't realize. Okay, we are adjourned till Wednesday, November 21st.